his Kenyan counterpart President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House, Nairobi. The visit, which comes days after the Central African nation was included in the East African Community, will see the two heads of state sign the bidding treaties. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta held talks with Dr. Fisk Johnson, the chairperson and CEO of SC Johnson and Sons Company, who paid him a courtesy call at State House, Nairobi. Speaking during the meeting, Johnson expressed his company's interest in partnering with Kenya in the fight against malaria. Johnson shared his company's intent to resume its purchasing of Kenya's pyrethrum for the production of chemicals to boost the war against malaria. Now, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Okoh will today read the budget for the 2022-2023 financial year, which is the last under the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta. The 3.31 trillion shillings budget will be read at a time that living standards in the country have continuously become unaffordable, especially due to the COVID-19 pandemic, drought, and rising prices for essential commodities such as fuel. To finance the budget, the Ministry of Finance expects to increase revenue through tax, with the bulk of the budget expected to be financed by local and international corporate loans. In this year's budget, the agriculture sector is expected to benefit the most, as it has been allocated 63.9 billion shillings. The 5.7 billion shillings will be used to buy cheap fertilizer that will be distributed to farmers. The fertilizer program aims to reduce production costs, which would help reduce the high cost of food. Now, Garissa Township Member of Parliament Aden Duale has now written to the National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee seeking a comprehensive statement over the alleged misuse of public funds on the Building Bridges initiative. This comes following the Supreme Court's ruling last week declaring the BBI-driven Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill as unconstitutional, null and void. Duale, in a letter to the PSC chair, cited alleged wastage of money from public coffers on the process by the BBI Steering Committee and Task Force, the BBI Secretariat, as well as principal secretaries. Now, Kenya Pipeline Managing Director Irungu Macharia has dismissed talks that the company's fuel reserves are running dry amid talks of a nationwide fuel shortage. Speaking in Nairobi during a meeting with petroleum stakeholders, Macharia underscored that the country is sufficiently stocked in the fuel and petroleum department. He likewise stated that Kenya will receive more fuel in the coming days, noting that the country will likely be overwhelmed by the surplus supply of inbound petroleum products. And Orange Democratic Movement Party leader Raila Odinga now says that setting up oil reserves strategically across the country will be the silver bullet in addressing future fuel crises. The remarks by Odinga come amidst a reported oil shortage in the country, with motorists being forced to queue for days in order to get fuel at various refilling stations. Odinga, who was speaking during a consultative meeting with petroleum stakeholders in Nairobi, said the move would curb a similar situation in the future without treating it as an emergency. Now, the Wiper Party is now raising the stakes in its push to have its leader Kalonzo Musyoka to deputize Raila Odinga in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Party. Kalonzo's lieutenants say the Wiper leader is the most experienced politician, and having ceded his presidential quest, a running mate post will be the only ideal position. This, as fringe parties within the Azimio claim that they were sidelined in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Party and demand withdrawal and renegotiation of the coalition agreement. Now, Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i now says that the government will begin using unconventional dispute resolution methods to determine any conflicts that may arise from key development projects. According to Matiang'i, adopting diplomacy-oriented conflict resolution methods will save the government a substantial amount of time and capital usually spent on never-ending court proceedings. The Interior CS was speaking in Mombasa after initiating talks between the government and project-affected persons in the dual link of Mombasa-Mariakani Highway that has been dogged by court cases over land compensation. Finally, as CS Okoh today reads the budget, all Standard Media Group platforms will be bringing you this information live. We'll be having a comprehensive coverage on the same, so don't go nowhere. We are here to bring you the latest and also know how the budget will be funded. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
SpiceFM, Nyeri. The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on Spice FM.
I like listening to you guys. You're the default radio station in my car in the morning. Even the children listen to you guys.
I agree Parliament has failed this country. And I will say it again. We have not done what we should have done.
We know in this country, the Kenya prison sector is one of the most underfunded sector.
The way it is being done and the way we're calling it Huduma Namba the Msema Kweli is because all records will be there. You know, there are people who are now billionaires with no history as to how they got all these assets.
Yes. Anything that the president does that is not in accord with the constitution is an illegal act. You know, he shouldn't be doing it and he shouldn't be sitting here and trying to sort of guise it up.
I totally believe live transmission of results and allowing Kenyans to be able to view all these results. I believe that it will be impossible to steal elections.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
On Thursday morning, and it looks like it's not going to be too difficult a time to get out where you're going right now because most of the roads are free and clear. A little bit of traffic here and there, but nothing too mind-boggling at the moment. Jogo Road is building up and we're getting to the city without too much of a problem. It's a breeze on the thicker superhighway for most parts. We're getting then to the Pangani underpasses where you'll find some traffic. Coming out of Westlands on Waiaki Way, a little bit of traffic as well. But like I said, nothing too crazy right now. We'll probably see the pickup in industrial area. Southern Bypass looks really good. Use that in and out to the city, and then let's see what happens in about half hour or so. Don't forget, speak to us. SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127. Let's keep things moving this Thursday.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Indeed, it is the only way to start your day. It's 8 minutes past 6 o'clock, and I have to tell you guys, today I'm feeling kind of lonely. You know, just here by myself, not quite sure what's going on. Have I been abandoned? I feel like a motherless child. Good morning. It's the 7th of April. Am I right? Yes, it is indeed. 8 minutes after 6 o'clock. And you're welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation today. How's everybody doing? Glad you could join us today. And things are shaping up slowly but surely. And we'll get to see what the morning looks like as we have some good conversations back to back today. It is budget day, and they're about to tell us what the country is going to spend or not spend or look for or not be able to find. So it'll be an interesting day of conversations today. And no, I am not alone. Eric Latiff is here with me in the studio. Eric, good morning. You're not talking? Day 2. Do you see how they treat me in this place? Let's go back where I came from. Eric, good morning.
Why are you insisting?
On what?
Must I greet you every morning?
Yes, what do you mean?
Should carry over yesterday's greetings.
I don't want. It's a new day, new things.
Just take Izile Zajana, copy paste.
Stacky.
And
Today is a different day.
apply the whole week.
Stacky.
Are you well?
I am well, thank you.
Very good.
morning.
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
How
Have
was
you been well?
Yes, I've been well. I thank God. Yes.
Super duper.
How was your day yesterday?
My day was fine.
What happened to the rain?
I don't know, man. It's not a disappearing act, but I have predicted.
Okay,
predicted
let's hear
today
this.
it will rain in Nairobi. It's been sprinkling a little bit here and there in the eastern part of the country, a little bit in the west. So I'm thinking that, we'll have more rain in this part today.
You think it's coming?
Around 3:17 there, it would have rained.
It's coming?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see if it's going to rain. But because anyway, it started raining just a couple of days and then it's gone. And we can't operate like this, Buena.
No.
There are people who are depending on this rain, and especially those parts of the country that are actually fully dependent on the rain.
Indeed.
No, we need the rain. We need the rain, people.
We need it back.
Oh, yes. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, everybody. Happy Thursday, first Friday of the week, 7th day of April 2022. It's still
we're in
April,
April
it's in
now?
March. No, it's still in March. We're waiting for power bills to come down and for the president to do the presidential thing of driving on the expressway. I'll tell you my experience with the expressway. See, I told you.
Yeah.
They have said, go and pay. Oh, I went. Logbook, what do you want? Logbook, what else do you want? My birth certificate, here. What else do you want? Money, how much? Here. What else do you want?
Bring it.
Bring, your car must be here. My car. Which one? Here.
Everything you gave them.
I gave them everything.
Alafu?
Then I asked them, can I drive on the road? They told me no. Anyway, welcome to the conversation. Today, we are going to have conversations about the budget. Okoh is expected to go to Parliament this afternoon. And so, therefore, we will be talking about what Okoh should be telling us, not what he has planned to tell us, what he should be telling us. We'll have two tax experts at 7 o'clock. Brian Kangata is a partner at Anderson Tax Advisory. And Christopher Kirathe is a tax and law partner at Ernst & Young. They will be here with us at 7 a.m. to talk about the tax options for financing Okoh 3.3 trillion shilling budget. At 8 o'clock, we get deeper into it, into the politics of it. So this is Uhuru's final budget. It's not his budget to implement. It's his budget to bequeath the next president.
Yes.
3.3 trillion shillings. So, have we heard anything from Raila Odinga, William Ruto, and the other presidential candidates on what they'd like to see in the budget that they take over in the next administration? Not yet, and why? So, what's the politics behind this? Bill Okerro is a former senator of Mandera County, has also been a member of the National Assembly, has been very instrumental in having conversations on the budget. He will be with us, plus entrepreneur and communication strategist Gerald Bitok. They'll be here at 8. 9 o'clock, it's Justice Thursdays. Let's not forget that we are heading towards August 9th, general election. And very many institutions must be ready to deal with whatever comes out of the election.
Indeed.
One of those offices is the Director of Public Prosecutions, and will be joined by a Senior Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions and Regional Prosecutions Coordinator from Rift Valley, Alois Kemo. He will be here with us to tell us about the ODPP's preparation ahead of the general election. So keep it here for all those conversations. It's a packed morning. COVID?
Yes, COVID is still doing the thing, and interesting to see now the world in about, if things are going the way in which we have seen over the last week, very likely that by the time the weekend hits, the world would have realized 500 million cases of COVID. Let's look quickly at what's happening in Kenya. 18 new cases from a smaller sample size of 2,917 puts the positivity rate at 0.6%. Many would say negligible, because if you're looking at positivity rates under 3%, you're still in good stead. Okay, not so good news. The UK has detected a new COVID variant, and folks know this so far. It's been detected in 637 patients, according to the statistics from the UK Health Security Agency. It is what's known as a recombinant, meaning it contains a mix of the previously highly infectious Omicron BA.1 strain and the newer BA.2 variant, currently the UK's dominant variant. So we don't really hear much about this BA.2, but now you're seeing that there's a mix of that plus Omicron, right? A recombinant is not uncommon. However, health authorities say there's currently not enough evidence to draw conclusions on its transmissibility or severity. So they're not quite sure yet. They're watching this one for now. They're saying that data on the new variant severity and ability to evade vaccines is not yet clear, though early estimates suggest it could be more transmissible than earlier strains. It has a growth rate of 9.8%, above that of the BA.2, while the World Health Organization has so far put that figure at 10%. Health authorities are saying they're continuing to monitor the situation. All right. Speaking of another situation, millions of people across China's lockdown financial hub of Shanghai have been desperately seeking medical care and basic supplies like food. Parents have been forcibly separated from young children infected with COVID-19. Public anger is mounting with no end in sight as China clamps down. This is reported by CNN, says that has started to battle its biggest wave yet, which is the case, and Shanghai now is the largest hotspot. So remember, they were doing a 7-day testing, and they've actually found out that quite a number of people then have been infected with COVID. But again, the severity of it is not that bad. People are not presenting with symptoms. We're still looking at an asymptomatic situation, but they're still tightening the screws and having people stay home. 20,000 new cases Tuesday. Far past the peak of Wuhan in 2020 at the onset. So at the very beginning, Wuhan was not even at 20,000. And this is what they're looking at now. The policy is to clamp down, no movement, etc. But the questions are, will they be able to maintain this policy throughout the population? So folks are having a difficult time right now in terms of course, freedom of movement is not to be questioned. People are being asked to stay at home. But
so CNN is reporting that people are being forcefully separated from their children.
Their families, I know.
And then?
Of course, telling us what life under lockdown is like. Just 3 days, 4 days, a week into the lockdown. So the mandatory nationwide testing detected a surge in cases, prompting them to extend the lockdown until further notice, while they test more, review results, transfer positive cases, and analyze the overall COVID situation.
Where?
Okay. That is what is going on.
At 18 after 6, we are live streaming the show, as you know, and if you're online, you know what to do. Say hello. We'll be doing the roll call shortly. Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Ndu says around 3 what p.m.? 3:17 p.m. Some parts of Nairobi will be raining.
Oh, it would have rained.
Now you need to tell us which parts. Otherwise, this thing is...
Otherwise, I'm a fake rain.
Aish.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads. Make some noise. Yeah! You're listening to Spice FM.
The group of leaders we are having now, these are just like the polymers. The chemical composition is the same.
Are you corruptible?
Hopefully not. And maybe that's part of the problem.
People who have done about 300 speeches and they're not saying anything. What makes you think that they will come in with something really dramatic?
Don't miss out on the latest from Kenya's biggest
conditions in Nairobi.
conversation.
We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 16. At 15, it's partly cloudy in Nakuru. 29 will be the high and lows of 14. 14 also looking at a low in Nakuru, where it's currently clear, and we'll see highs of 26. At 13, Eldoret is clear, highs of 26 and lows of 13. And we're looking at mostly clear conditions for now in Mombasa at 25, highs of 32, and we'll see highs of 33 in Malindi, where it's mostly clear currently at 29. Okay, Kisumu clear at 21, highs of 29 and lows of 20, while Kakamega is clear this morning at 16. It'll go to highs of 31 and lows of 15 today. Looking at partly cloudy conditions in Kampala, highs of 29 and lows of 18, while Dar es Salaam is clear at 26. We'll see highs of 32. 9 degrees, a bit chilly this morning in Johannesburg, highs of 21 and lows of 9, while in Lagos it's mostly clear at 27. We'll see highs of 33. Highs of 33 as well will be realized in Kinshasa, where it's currently clear at 25. Looking out into Beijing, it's 15 degrees and sunny. Highs of 23 and lows of 7 going into afternoon Thursday. Paris is raining at 11. Highs of 14 and lows of 8. While at 9 degrees, it's also raining in London. Highs of 13 and lows of 4. New York is cloudy Wednesday night. We'll see highs of 12 and lows of 8.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Who's online now?
Quite a number of people online this morning. Really good to see you guys. Dagio Guta, how are you? Good morning. Tuned in from Kisumu. Gordon Mugisha, tuned in from Kampala this morning. Good morning to Latiff, Juja loud and clear. That's where Ken Mukuna is. Listening to the show is like listening to the famous ground, but with some spice. That's what Chabon Toro says. I like that. MCS is streaming from Mombasa. And you're having a problem, or rather you're wishing Chelsea FC a better showing in the next matches. Okay, well. Maureen Jola says, good morning. Again, you're tuning in from somewhere in Kenya. Okay. Rachel Wambari, we see you. Good morning. Patrick Fikirini is also tuned in from County 001. Benson Mwasia, tuned in from Naivasha. And Sauzi, we see you as well. Susan Jerry, good morning to you. David is tuned in as well. Joyful morning from Kimilili. That's what Amos Freeman says. Abraham Silas, good morning to you. Wycliffe, tuned in from Kampala. Odhiambo Nick, where is CT? Well, CT will be back on Monday. He's taking some days off. John Wafula, Patrick, Toto, David, we see you. Timothy, good morning. Chris, Josephine, Sky, Tarish, good morning. Omriki Zelensky, good morning to you. Karuri Kamau, tuned in from Kasarani this morning. We see all of you, can't get to everybody, but thanks for joining us.
Everybody, welcome. Today's proverb, we're still in Malawi. We are not moving out of Malawi.
These Malawians have done a number on you.
We are not moving out of Malawi. Okay? Blow your horn in a herd of elephants. Crow in the company of cockerels. Bleat in a flock of goats. When you're in a herd of elephants, you do what?
Trumpet.
You blow your horn. You know they don't have a word for trumpet. When in the company of cockerels, what you do?
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
You crow in the company of cockerels, and in the flock of goats, you bleat.
So when in Rome,
do as the Romans do.
voila.
That's it.
Isn't it interesting how Africans use animals a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interaction with animals is, it's a daily thing.
Indeed. I like that.
It's animals, it's your surrounding. Animals and plants and trees especially. It's either a tree or an animal or an insect or a fellow human being. So, Tupo hapa, let's take a look at the newspaper headlines, and remember www.standardmedia.co.ke. Premium content online. There's a story about, there's a guy who is a football commentator of the English Premier League called Peter Drury. Very famous among the football fans. So there's a Kenyan guy who then goes ahead to mimic Peter Drury. Watches the videos and Peter Drury doing the commentary, and then this person comes to mimic and appears like he's the one who's doing it. Yeah, like Chelsea losing last night, and he says whatever he's saying. So the rise of Kenya's Peter Drury after years of mimicking Arap Uria has earned global recognition. So those videos that he has been making, they have gone far and wide.
When he thought nobody was watching.
Yes.
The world was watching.
The world was watching. So go and read that story. Standardmedia.co.ke.
Right. So there's many things happening today. We know this. The budget reading takes place in Parliament today. the politics of the day still going on, etc., etc. But let's land this to reality, where in the Standard today, it's being reported about a woman and she's contested a court verdict on the custody of her child in a 10-year case. She's been seeking custody of this young boy for a long time. She has contested a judgment that only allowed supervised 9-hour access to her daughter every year. In his judgment, Nakuru Senior Resident Magistrate Benjamin Limo ruled that EW, which is what we call her, was unfit to raise EM. He granted custody to MT. Follow me so far?
EW is the mother.
Yes.
And the father is?
MT.
MT. Okay.
And EM is the child.
All right.
EW will have access to the minor on the first Saturday of each of the closing school holidays for 3 hours only. Mr. Limo further restrained EW or her relatives from visiting the child at her school until she attains the age of 18. EW and MT have been embroiled in a custody dispute since February 2012, when EM was just 16 months old. So the child was 1 year and 4 months old, and this has been happening since then. Child is now almost 11. The case has now moved to the High Court in Nakuru before Justice Teresia Matheka. On Tuesday, Justice Matheka ordered MT to present the child currently under his custody tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. for the court to see her. I don't know why at 8:30 p.m., but okay. EW now wants Justice Matheka to quash Mr. Limo's judgment. She accuses Limo of being biased. She wants the judge to quash a report from the Children's Department that sided with MT, saying it was also biased. The appellant wants the court to direct the Judiciary Ombudsman to investigate conducts of judicial officers and supporting staff of both Milimani and Nakuru law courts in the respective cases and make recommendations on the disciplinary measures to be preferred against them. She wants the court to either grant her full custody of the minor as per the law or allow her access during weekends and holidays. So court records show that MT entered a customary marriage with EW in February 2009 and they were then blessed with EM. Right? However, domestic wrangles forced EW to flee her matrimonial home on August 23rd, 2011, just 2 years later. MT then took over custody of the minor in February 2012 when she was 16 months old, and a dispute ensued between the two till date. EW in her documents claimed MT forcibly took over the minor and vowed never to allow her access to the girl. Aggrieved, she moved to court in Kikuyu and obtained an order from the then senior magistrate Clara Otieno in 2012. Otieno issued orders for the minor to be taken to her from her father and returned to her mother. MT challenged this order. He won custody and EW moved to the Milimani High Court and appealed under number 289 of 2012. She claims she was granted interim custody, but the file disappeared for over 2 years. Yes.
In the meantime, father has custody.
Yes.
All right.
There. Frustrated by the delay, she claims it was out of that desperation for not seeing her daughter for 4 years. She went to her daughter's school in 2019 and took her away.
Okay.
Now, MT moved to Limo's court and sued EW, accused her of abducting their child. He claims the child was taken as she was preparing to sit her end-term examination. He alleged that EW lured the girl with a promise to buy her chips, but instead put her in a car and drove her to her house where she alleged to have forced to make the child live. In 2019, Limo ordered EW arrested for kidnapping the daughter after losing custody. He ordered officers commanding Police Nakuru and Kiambu police stations to trace and arrest EW after her refusing to surrender her daughter to court as directed in October 2019 now. The court also committed her to civil jail for contempt. However, 2019 December, Matheka stayed the ruling and ordered EW released from prison. She ordered a retrial, so now she's been in prison for 3 months. December, Matheka says, okay, guys, hold all
Just
this.
release the mother and let her go.
Yes.
Retrial.
Exactly.
Start this thing again. Okay.
She ordered a retrial before Limo, who ordered a children's report before judgment. The report stated 12 the report dated February 2020 by Saloma Waithaka, the sub-county children officer, stated that the minor demonstrated confidence and trust in her father.
Mm-hmm.
The father is capable of bringing the minor up without her mother's support. He will avail the access to mother on supervision basis without interference with her education. So this is what happened until now. EW is asking that the court review this judgment, because right now all she gets is 9 hours every year.
And this is
3 hours on the first Saturday of the beginning of a holiday. And there are more or less about 3 of these holidays every year.
First Saturday, beginning of a holiday for only 3
hours. Yes.
That's the only access that she has.
Exactly.
Hey, this one is one of those. Yeah. It's bitter, it's painful, it's dragging on for so long.
Yep.
It's not good for the child.
It is.
It's not good for the couple either. Not good for the mother, not good for the father. Because we're talking about people who came together, they fell in love. So they thought. They got married. They went, customarily got married. They got a baby. And then matrimonial dispute emerges and mother flees home. Child is left with the father. Father is taking care of child. Then we start now.
We
back
start
and
now
forth.
that back and forth. So
it's
unfortunate that the child has to be caught in the middle of all of this.
Yeah. It's really sad.
10 years since she was a baby, this is all she's known. So I mean, what happens now? It will be interesting to see what Matheka rules tomorrow. How this will play out, because here we have Matheka being the same judge who asked that she be released from the Nakuru GK prisons and said, okay, let's release her and then see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what she says when the child is presented in court tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a sad one. That's a sad one. Let's take a quick break and take a look at the traffic, and then we'll be looking at other newspaper headlines. It's 28 minutes to 7. Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, live on Spice FM, live on YouTube and Facebook. Spice FM KE, that's our Facebook page. Or if you just go to YouTube, search Spice FM KE, you'll find our channel and you'll find our live stream there. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
The Board of Governors, Principal, and the entire staff of PC Kenyanjui Technical Training Institute wish to invite all graduates who qualify for the award of Artisan, Craft, and Diploma Certificate during 2018 to 2021 academic years to the Institute's 6th graduation ceremony. The ceremony will be held on Friday, 8th April 2022 from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Institute's grounds. The chief guest will be Dr. Margaret W. Mwakima, Principal Secretary, State Department of Vocational and Technical Training, Ministry of Education. For more information on PC Kenyanjui Technical Training Institute, visit www.kenyanjuitechnical.ac.ke.
All right, half past the hour, but it doesn't look too bad right now. Coming off Mombasa Road, free and clear, not too much of an issue inbound. And also Huru Highway, everybody's taking you through. You're going to come in from Gong Road, Haile Selassie on the other side, going further down towards Valley Road and then out towards the city and then into Westlands. Not much of an issue here. A little bit of action on the Thika Superhighway right around there, the Pangani underpass going out towards Muranga Road. But apart from that, there is no drama whatsoever. Looks like it's going to be a good day traffic-wise, but we're going to keep an eye on things and see how it all pans out. Spice FM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Spice FM, Malindi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Okay, 26 to 7. So let me tell you the story of a lady called Dr. Selina Vukinu Ambe. Dr. Selina Vukinu Ambe. Between July 24th and September 11th, 2020, she was on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she got befriended by somebody on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
The somebody on Facebook was Eugene Wamalwa, cabinet secretary.
Mm-hmm.
So they start talking. And she's like, I'd like a job. And he's like, a job? Hey, don't worry. Job we will organize for you. Mm-hmm. Can you send me your CV? So she sends the CV. So he says the CS that he'll deliver the CV to State House for her to be employed.
Okay, here we go.
After sending the CV, the guy is like, now, because I need to do this, there's several people that we need to grease hands. So send me some cash. Send some cash.
CS.
Yeah, this is Wamalwa. Now Wamalwa is not the employer.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Okay? He is not the employer. In 2020, Wamalwa was the CS for devolution. He had not yet gone to defense. Okay?
So.
And you want a job in State House. Is State House devolved?
No.
And you want a job in State House? Sasa lazima tuongeleshe watu wa State House. So tuma kitu kidogo. So she sends something kidogo. The guy says, okay, in fact, now I've secured for you an appointment. And here's a letter signed by the head of civil service, Joseph Kenywa. This is an appointment letter. You've gotten the job. And you are supposed to report on August 7th, 2020. Okay? This is after she has, just pesa kidogo between July 24th and this. Kidogo, 1,000, 2,000 ya mafuta, 3,000 ya nini ya mboga, 4,000, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, 800,000 shillings.
Get out of here.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Wait, you're dealing with CS, bwana. And it's State House, bwana.
You're looking for a job and you have 800k to spend.
800,000 shillings. Dr. Selina Vukinu Ambe parted with 800,000 shillings. Okay? This bwana CS goes missing. Phone goes off.
But he's in cabinet meanwhile.
See, the woman goes to police. Wamalwa amekula pesa yangu na acha nipatie kazi. Wamalwa gani? Si huyu. Investigations reveal that the person called our Wamalwa is actually Patrick Shikure Amere.
Oh.
Who is a prisoner. Ako jela.
People fall for this thing.
Mr. Amere is actually a prisoner who has been there for 15 years.
Oh, good Lord.
Is in committee. Okay.
I have questions.
Patrick Shikure Amere, a.k.a. CS Eugene Wamalwa, a.k.a. very many others to very many other people. End up with 800k. So investigators do this and they find out, this is a prisoner. The guy is in prison. He's been there for 15 years. He's serving a long jail term. They get him. Man is taken to court.
From inside the jail?
Yes. And of course, fraud and all those things. He is there for serving a life sentence.
Yeah.
So he's taken to court. He goes before court. Excuse me, Your Honor. Excuse me, Your Honor. I'd like to speak. Your Honor, I'd like the court to give an order for me to record a statement with the police and name the prison officers who have been collaborating with to acquire this money.
If I'm going down, sisi wote.
Twende.
Yeah.
Kama ni hivyo. Kama mbaya.
Oh, no.
So he has applied. And the magistrate, Wendy Kagendo, is going to make that determination whether he's going to do this. No, Shitubi sitting in, he went before a different magistrate called Shitubi. Says this Amere man should be presented in court again on the 13th of April.
There's nothing like keeping him for investigations because he's already there.
Man is serving jail time in committee.
He's already there. So nothing like, please, we need another 21 days keeping him.
So where is this 800,000 shillings? Anyway.
Where did it go? How does he do these things? Because he was sending a letter, had been signed, I'm assuming PDF copy, etc., etc.
He is accessing
communication
Facebook.
Center, exactly. He's got the internet. What communication center exists at committee for him to do all these things without the assistance of said prison officers?
And then the investigators, even by the time they're just taking him, what are they telling us? Even you investigators and the prosecution, by the time you're only taking this prisoner and saying he has defrauded people, can't you just ask yourself, how did he do it?
Where is he?
Who are the enablers?
And look at the details of this. He was able to present documentation. That means he has access to the internet.
Yeah.
He's printing something, then turning it to PDF. What is happening? He's communicating with this girl, this lady, this doctor. He's communicating with her regular. He's receiving money.
Dr. Selina Vukino Ambe.
How did she used to send this money? And did it read when?
G's.
Sorry. You sent M-Pesa. You sent M-Pesa. Did it read?
Of course, you can't send the money. When you're sending money to a CS. When you're sending money to a CS and this is to corruptly get a job, you can't send money to me, CS, directly.
No, of course not.
Are you stupid?
So you send it to
CS. Let me give you a number here that you are going to send to that person. Now, ukituma unitumia message. Ukituma your message kwangu ndio nijue you post the message here on Facebook so that I know. Why is this woman not in court?
The woman, the doctor.
Yes.
Because even her, she was.
This is corruption.
She was bribing to get a job.
Yes.
Right. It doesn't matter that the person she was bribing is a prisoner behind bars. It doesn't matter.
That's not the point. That's not the point.
Unless somebody decides to take her to court right now, in this case, she is the complainant. She's the one who has said, come, wait.
It's okay.
Somebody has taken money from me. They said they'll give me a job they didn't give me.
Okay. But now...
Okay. Gosh, it'll be very interesting to see how this pans out. Hey, rearrest you, try you while you're already, then giving you another sentence which will be concurrent to the one that you're serving. What happens in a case like that, I wonder. But then this is an opportunity also to look at what is really going on with all those messages you get random, Tuma Kwahina, blah blah. A lot of these people we've known are residents of prisons.
Let me tell you one more story before we move on, because it's still court related. Okay. There's a senior resident magistrate, principal, not resident, senior principal magistrate, who is called James Ongondo. He was arrested on Friday last week at near Shari's Bar and Restaurant in Kaplong. What he had done is he was there. Mr. Magistrate was there celebrating with some fellow lawyers. Has 15 years experience as a magistrate, has risen through the ranks owing to his exceptional performance in all his workstations, something his employer has also recognized. Now, on this particular Friday, he was at a social function with his peers when he was accosted by 2 police officers. He says, I was inebriated, having imbibed a few alcoholic drinks, being that I was away from official duties and celebrating a milestone accomplished by one of us. Through his lawyer, who is called Sakwa, John Sakwa, he says the magistrate drank with friends after completing his official duties. That is a practice widely acceptable around the world, according to Sakwa. The magistrate was in the presence of a woman who was above 18 years old. That's where the story begins. The manager at Shari's Bar and Restaurant sees Mr. Magistrate reserving accommodation for the night in the company of said woman.
Yes.
Manager looks, manager determines this is an underage girl. Manager calls police. Police come. When Mr. Magistrate is just going to his car to get his bags, for the night, to take to the room, police
descended upon him.
Kamata ye. You are with a minor. taken to cells.
To what?
Cell.
Did
Now,
they establish that he
and
indeed
has
what?
been taken to court.
Ah.
This is a court story where the magistrate is saying, look. As far as I'm concerned, this is a mature woman above 18. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was in her company. She was there with all of us at the pub. These guys sold her alcohol.
Mm-hmm. She was drinking.
When they were selling her alcohol, she was not a minor. But when now we have finished, she becomes a minor. Story gani mnaniletea mimi bwana? I'm a married man. I have a family. Mr. Sakwa, the lawyer, says they have verified the true age of this woman by producing her birth certificate, which shows she is 22.
So what's the problem?
The manager looked and thought, this one is a minor.
But now it has gone to court and they've established that she's 22. So they should
Now
close
this
the story now.
This is now the matter in court. Now it's for the court to determine whether indeed they look at this. Yes, this is a verifiable birth certificate. Nothing wrong.
This one will be sued for libel. This
Meanwhile,
woman, the manager in the bar, tainting a good man's name.
Imagine. 15 years experience, rising through the ranks, senior principal magistrate.
Married family man.
Yes.
After all.
And then you're saying that I was with a minor. Doing what with minor?
Mature woman.
Yeah. Hapana. Yeah. Uh-huh.
There's anxiety.
Yes.
There are teachers, and it's the time for mass transfers because we're going into a new year. It always happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Teachers are anxious ahead of mass transfers next term as the TSC carries out a rationalization intended to balance staff across the country. Commission Chief Executive Nancy Macharia said the exercise is meant to ensure all schools have a balanced teacher-to-learner ratio before the start of the new academic calendar. Schools are scheduled to reopen for the 2022 first term on April 25th. The countrywide exercise started yesterday and will see teachers in both primary and secondary schools across the country transferred to various schools. So, it's going to toss everything in the bag and then let it go. To a circular to all TSC regional directors, Ms. Macharia said that despite numerous efforts by the Commission to address teacher shortages, the situation is compounded by irregular teacher distribution. And she says, if unchecked, this will adversely impact learning outcomes in our learning institutions. She directed the regional directors, to coordinate with country directors in their respective regions and undertake teacher rationalization with a view to ensuring equitable distribution across schools. So it was a problem before where some schools didn't have enough, didn't have in terms of quality. So they're saying, okay, guys, let's look at what we have and then let's look at the teachers that we have and then spread them across so that everybody has the benefit of quality and quantity. And now some teachers, of course, if you get into your comfort zone and you're teaching in a particular place, you've gotten acclimatized to it, and then you're going to be uprooted and moved somewhere else. And you have no say about where you go. You work for the government.
You go where they send you.
You go where they send you.
Now, it brings back that issue of, posting teachers, delocalization of teachers. I don't know. That argument.
That you go and
there's
teach
a balance
in a place that you're not,
that
you did not grow up in or have been for a long
this
time.
This is not your local, this is not your home.
So that you get to know a different parts of the country and then
also children get to know.
Get to know.
Now, those who argue against it say, this delocalization of teachers means that you're bringing a teacher to teach in a community and they don't understand the nuances of the community. They don't understand everything else that happens in this community. It takes long for this teacher to, first of all, acclimatize in this area. It takes long for the teacher to understand. So if this child has not come to school, do I know anything, the background of this, the child? Do I know the parents? Do I know where they come from? Do I know what they do? There's a lot that you don't know.
Yeah.
So teachers end up just making, especially if you're a head teacher, you just end up making mistakes because you actually have not internalized what's the story. That every child is a long story of where they've come from, what they do, what the parents are, who the family are.
So it would make sense then to have a teacher who is aware of the
teacher who knows
rumblings of the community.
Yes.
Know what's going on, know the families. Then it would be easier for you to.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I think in some cases, you need a mix of both.
Yeah.
In some cases.
Yeah.
In primary school, apart from there are some teachers who were local, and then there were some teachers who were not local. Teachers who came from other parts of the country.
Yeah.
And they bring in that whole, experience into the community. It's upon you to get somewhere and learn.
It's important.
Learn the community.
It's
Don't
important.
just say, mimi unajua kusi kwetu. Mimi sijui. Me, I don't know. Yeah.
I want to tell you something else.
Tell us something.
Internationally, you remember Thomas Sankara?
Yes.
The vivacious leader.
He's the owner of that hotel in Westland.
Well, it was named for him. The vivacious leader who was gunned down at the very early age of 37. Now, Burkina Faso's former president, Blaise Compaoré, was sentenced to life imprisonment for complicity in the 1987 murder of his predecessor, Thomas Sankara, in a coup a military tribunal ruled yesterday. The charismatic Marxist revolutionary Sankara was gunned down in the West African nation's capital of Ouagadougou at the age of 37, 4 years after he took power in a previous push. Compaoré was charged in absentia along with his former head of security Hyacinth Kafando, who was also sentenced to life imprisonment. Both have previously denied any involvement in Sankara's death, along with 12 other defendants accused of involvement in the plot, 3 of whom were declared innocent Wednesday. The court finds Blaise Compaoré and Hyacinth Kafando guilty of attack on state security, complicity in murder, and concealment of a corpse. The tribunal said in its ruling, Compaoré went on to rule for 27 years before being ousted in another coup in 2014 and fleeing to Côte d'Ivoire, where he is still believed to live. Fondly known as Africa's Che Guevara, Sankara took power on a promise to thwart corruption and post-colonial influence, denouncing foreign aid as a control mechanism. He rolled out mass vaccination against polio, banned female circumcision and polygamy, and was one of the first African leaders to publicly recognize the growing AIDS epidemic as a threat to the continent. A former fighter pilot, Sankara won public support in the impoverished nation by selling a government fleet of Mercedes, for lowering the pay of well-off public servants, and forbidding first-class state travel. He cut his own salary, refused to work with air conditioning, and jogged through Ouagadougou unaccompanied. Critics say his reforms curtailed freedoms and did little to enrich ordinary people, but admiration remains to date. Over the weekend, students gathered around with white flowers marking the spot where Sankara was shot. Sankara was an icon for many young Africans in the 1980s and remains a heroic figure. Be it through the red beret worn by firebrand South African politician Julius Malema, or the household brooms wielded at street demonstrations in Burkina Faso, there are signs that his legacy is enjoying a revival. Praised by his supporters for his integrity and selflessness, the military captain and anti-imperialist revolutionary led Burkina Faso for 4 years from 1983, but he's seen by others as an autocrat who came to power through a coup and valued discipline above human rights. Sankara was a staunch defender of things homegrown, such as cotton, and yet the African textile industry failed to make him a T-shirt icon. While Burkina Faso's former leader may not be the poster boy of revolution like Argentine-born Che Guevara, many taxis across West Africa have a round sticker of him in his beret on their windscreen. His influence is still felt as far afield as South Africa, argues many columnists. Sankara seized power not long after Flight Lieutenant Rawlings had led his second coup and unfortunately was shot down in 1987. And
so
now
87
Compaoré,
justice comes home today, 2022.
Yes.
And the person who is basically being convicted here is a president who ruled for 27 years.
Yes. After his death.
Whoa. But then I think it's a good statement coming out of this tribunal. It's a good statement to say it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter how long.
It doesn't matter how long. We may not even be able to get you because you took off and you haven't come back, and we don't even know where you are. But wherever you are, death upon you.
Yeah, that's it. Really,
This is it.
They'll find him
Wherever you
wherever
are,
he is.
wherever you are, everybody, let history show that you are the one who killed your predecessor. You
Indeed.
are the one who orchestrated his murder, and you just put out a brilliant dream.
Indeed. Interesting to see that. Who would have thought?
He couldn't have. Blaise Compaoré could not have ruled for that long without support of external friends.
Oh, no, of course not.
He couldn't have organized that coup and then continue to rule for 27 years without the support of organized external friends. And those external friends also, shame on them.
I know. For something like this?
Because, when a guy is coming in and he's saying, let's look inward, let's
You're shutting out
build.
The world. Yeah.
Yes, let's do things. Let us rise. We are capable.
Yeah.
He's basically threatening the world order. So it's not even Blaise Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré was
and just like you're saying, even in his death, it was clear that there was an external hand at play here.
Yeah.
Find a way to take this fella out because he's going to now ruin our opportunity for control in this region.
Yeah. It's very, very, very sad. And it's just because he's a young man. He died at 37.
37, and he had done what he had done already.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very sad. Now, something else that's very, very sad. The Supreme Court building, that one in town next to KICC. Sections of it have been declared unsafe by an architect. Yesterday, Chief Justice Martha Koome revealed that the Supreme Court's roof is on the verge of collapsing. Part of the ablution block has been condemned. Justice Koome says she met an architect from the Netherlands who told her the truth about the sorry state of the building. I have brought several local experts to look at it and tell us the problem. When they come, they look at it and they run away without telling us what's wrong. Until I met with a person who is an architect in the Netherlands, a man of God, who told us the truth that part of this building had been condemned and the roof is caving in and it's not safe for habitation. Dramatic much?
And you guys have been there every day.
The CJ was speaking during a 3-day Kenya Judiciary Academy annual Judges Colloquium in Mombasa, where she said the judiciary needs to construct its own Supreme Court. She says the judiciary is working with a Building and Infrastructure Committee led by Justice William Okoh to develop a judiciary infrastructure Marshall Plan to guide the rollout of an infrastructure vision for the next 10 years. She says they are working to make the KJA a hub that helps to maintain and further develop the professional qualities and efficiency. Now, let's come back to that issue now because the story is now going into KJA and all. Several times, she says, the Chief Justice, we have asked local architects, come. Just do an audit of this building. Tell us what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
They take off without saying a word.
But why?
Until this man of God from the Netherlands, who's an architect, comes and tells her, Madam, let me tell you the truth. This roof, it's caving.
The sky will fall on our heads.
Those toilets.
Disaster. Why would the other fellows not say? If that was the case.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they say? I mean, we have to sort it. Why wouldn't they say? It took somebody from outside and then even from heaven.
That's the part that I don't get.
I don't understand. Why?
And was this a properly commissioned audit?
Or is this a by the way? Hey,
or is this a friend who has come?
Tell us what you think. Yeah, tell me what you think about this thing.
Yeah.
Was there doubt in what these other guys had said? We're not being told what the other ones had said. We're
they
just being told
off.
that they went away.
Yes.
Or they say, hey, the magnitude of the destruction that has already taken place here. I'm not interested. They go. Or what?
What's in the raft of the Supreme Court? Maybe there are things that they find that a skeleton. Oh, no. This one I'm not touching. Because these are architects and this is what they do on a daily basis
this
in this
is
country.
What I'm saying. Why would you run away from an opportunity to work? No.
Something is not
wrong.
Something is not right
Something
here.
Rotting in the state of Denmark. In the rafters of the Supreme Court.
But they have quoted a verbatim. I have brought several local experts to look at it and tell us the problem. When they come, they look at it and they run away without telling us what is wrong. Until I met with a person who's an architect in the Netherlands, a man of God, who told us the truth that part of the building had been condemned and the roof was caving in.
Let me ask you. He was in the Netherlands and then she brought him to Kenya?
I don't know.
From the Netherlands? As in she brought him, commissioned him to come here and check?
Who knows?
You get as you be.
This one is...
there's something.
You wonder. So what exactly is afoot here? What is Justice Martha Koome saying? Kenya's biggest conversation. Keep it right here. In the next hour, we talk about taxation. How are we going to raise tax to finance 3.3 trillion shillings budget? It's 7 a.m. Good morning.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Antoine Tshisekedi is set to tour Kenya for a 2-day state visit beginning today. A statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that President Tshisekedi will be hosted by his Kenyan counterpart President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House Nairobi. The visit, which comes days after the Central African nation was included in the East African Community, will see the two heads of state sign the bidding treaties. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta held talks with Dr. Fisk Johnson, the chairman and CEO of SC Johnson and Sons Company, who paid him a courtesy call at State House Nairobi. Speaking during the meeting, Johnson expressed his company's interest in partnering with Kenya in the fight against malaria. Johnson shared his company's intent to resume its purchasing of Kenya's pyrethrum for the production of chemicals to boost the war against malaria. Our Treasury Cabinet Secretary Kuriatani will today read the budget for the 2022-2023 financial year, which is the last under the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta. The 3.31 trillion shillings budget will be read at a time the living standards in the country has continuously become unaffordable, especially due to the COVID-19 pandemic, drought and rising prices for essential commodities such as fuel. To finance the budget, the Ministry of Finance expects to increase revenue through tax, with the bulk of the budget expected to be financed by local and international corporate loans. In this year's budget, the agriculture sector is expected to benefit the most, as it has been allocated 63.9 billion shillings. The 5.7 billion shillings will be used to buy cheap fertilizer that will be distributed to farmers. The fertilizer program aims to reduce production costs, which will help reduce the high cost of food. The Garissa Township Member of Parliament Aden Duale has now written to the National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee seeking a comprehensive statement over the alleged misuse of public funds on the Building Bridges initiative. This comes following the Supreme Court's ruling last week declaring the BBI-driven Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2022 as unconstitutional, null and void. Duale, in a letter to the PSC chair, cited alleged wastage of money from public coffers on the process by the BBI Steering Committee and Task Force, the BBI Secretariat, as well as Principal Secretaries. Now, Kenya Pipeline Managing Director Irungu Macharia has dismissed talks that the company's fuel reserves are running dry amid talks of a nationwide fuel shortage. Speaking in Nairobi during a meeting with petroleum stakeholders, Macharia underscored that the country is sufficiently stocked in the fuel and petroleum department. He likewise stated that Kenya will receive more fuel in the coming days, noting that the country will likely be overwhelmed by the surplus supply of inbound petroleum products. Now, Orange Democratic Movement Party leader Raila Odinga now says that setting up oil reserves strategically across the country will be the silver bullet in addressing future fuel crisis. The remarks by Odinga come amidst a reported oil shortage in the country, with motorists being forced to queue for days in order to get fuel at various filling stations. Odinga, who was speaking during a consultative meeting with petroleum stakeholders in Nairobi, said the move would cap a similar situation in the future without treating it as an emergency. And the Wiper Party is now raising the stakes in its push to have its leader Kalonzo Musyoka deputize Raila Odinga in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Party. Kalonzo's lieutenants, led by Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, they say that Kalonzo is the most experienced politician, and having ceded his presidential quest, a running mate post will be the only ideal position. These, as fringe parties within the Azimio claim that they were sidelined in the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Party and demand withdrawal and renegotiation of the coalition agreement. And Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i now says the government will begin using unconventional dispute resolution method to determine any conflicts that may arise from the key development projects. According to Matiang'i, Adopting diplomacy-oriented conflicts resolution methods will save the government a substantial amount of time and capital usually spent on never-ending court proceedings. The Interior CS was speaking in Mombasa after initiating talks between the government and project-affected persons in the dual-link of Mombasa-Mariakani Highway that has been dogged by court cases over land compensation. And finally, as CS Yatani will be reading the budget today, all Standard Media Group platforms will be bringing you this information, bringing you the latest, also inform you on how this budget will be financed. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Assetto. Good morning.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
All right, now is when it's starting to build up on the Thika Superhighway today, going into the city, and we're seeing it going past the Utali Drift, heading out towards the Survey direction. We're also looking at Kiambu Road has built up some in and outbound traffic, bumper to bumper, in some parts as you're heading out towards the city. All right, what else are we seeing coming out of Westlands, Wayaki Way, and then coming into the city as well? That slows down just a little bit. Also, where else are we seeing it? On Jogo Road, that whole area then coming into from industrial area out into the city as well. Not too bad in terms of traffic this morning. A likelihood of slippery streets with rain that is beckoning. Let's have a look at what it looks like in a short while. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
7
This
minutes after
is
7.
the
Good morning. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. If you're just joining us, if you're here for the second hour, asante for keeping it locked. It's the 7th day of March 2022. It's March until the day they announced that power bills have come down by 15%. Remember, there was a pledge that at the end of March, the second tranche of 15% reduction of power. Now, because we haven't seen the second tranche of 15%,
still be March.
We're still
That
in
is the
March.
only explanation that makes sense, Eric.
Yeah. If we move to April, then we'll just be going against everything that our government has told us. Also, it's March when the president will be opening the expressway. Yeah, so it's still.
And since that has not happened,
it's still
it therefore
March.
cannot be March.
Yes.
April.
We have two guests in the studio, and we'll be talking about Ukur Yatani's budget today. What we expect to hear him say in terms of how much he wants to raise in local revenue, how much he wants to finance the deficit, and what are the options that he has. Before we introduce the guests, the day's proverb, it's a Malawian proverb. This week, we're in Malawi. When CT comes, he will now move to another country. Blow your horn in a herd of elephants. Crow in the company of cockerels. Bleats in a flock of goats. Blow your horn in a herd of elephants. Crow if you're in the company of cockerels. And if you so happen to be in a flock of goats, bleat. Don't confuse. Do not confuse.
Do not go to
Don't go nay nay.
and go.
Don't
blowing your
go
trumpet.
nay nay with
with cockerels.
with cockerels. Okay. Yeah, make sure that you do the right thing with the right audience. Now we have a right audience, tax experts. So, Ndu,
Yes.
we have to talk like tax experts. Let's introduce them first. Brian Kangeta is a partner at Anderson Tax Advisory, and Christopher Kirathe is a tax and law partner at Ernst & Young. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Tax partners, tax experts. So let's first of all get to understand just your organizations, the organizations that you come from, so that we can get into the conversation. Christopher, Ernst & Young, it's a global one. Tell us about it and the work that you do here.
Thank you very much. So Ernst & Young is a traditional professional firm.
Traditional professional firm?
Yes. Yeah, so what do I mean? We have traditionally provided assurance services, which is basically audit, tax services as well, and then strategy and transactions, which means we support M&A deals, as well as a whole host of consulting services.
Okay.
So that's Ernst & Young in a nutshell. We are a global firm, as you said, in about over 150 countries in the world, with a whole large of population of staff and partners. So we are categorized into areas. So we fall under EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East, India, and Africa. Again, we are categorized into regions, and we fall under Africa region.
Hey, okay.
Thank you very much.
Is Anderson global? Brian?
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed, Eric. Anderson is the former Arthur Anderson. We picked the Anderson flag in 2018 in Kenya. Anderson, the name was revived by former Arthur Anderson partners around about 2005. And the footprint has slowly been growing across the world. In Africa, we are currently in 46, 47 countries. And this started off as a typical tax practice, but we are slowly opening up to other facets of professional practice, more so the legal side of things. So we are looking at ourselves as a tax and legal practice. We have quite a number of law firms in our practice under the Anderson flag. And so I am a partner in the Anderson Nairobi office, practicing tax advisory, tax consulting.
Okay.
Yes.
When you talk about tax and tax advisory services, many people interact with tax from, at this point, budgets, and then the next thing, carry. So who is it that you advise?
We don't restrict ourselves to advising specific individuals or specific sectors. We have done work with government. We have done work with private sector. We have done work with individuals or even family businesses. So we don't restrict ourselves, and because we believe that pie is out there, it can be split as much as possible, and we can even render our services not only to private sector but even to government themselves, as we try to arrive at a situation that is more palatable to the common mwananchi.
Okay. Again, when we hear tax, you think about what you have to pay if you're running a business every now and then, or then what the government is going to chuck off your payslip if you work, or the little things that you have to do if you're a trader, right? Are we looking at a broader than definition of an area through which the tax that you practice with then covers, then segueing into how this now budget talk that we are going into, whereby unfortunately, for a lot of people who see it, it would be assumed that the CS is going to be looking for money from the taxes that we do or do not pay.
Yeah, well, like Brian has said, we of course, tax is one of the policy tools that our government uses to finance public goods, which means our common roads, like the expressway here, we wouldn't have it if we didn't pay taxes.
Okay.
So, and as a policy tool, as a fiscal policy tool, therefore, it behoves all of us then to contribute to that. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So what we do, of course, is to advise taxpayers, and taxpayers are broad, which means your households, persons, yourselves, corporates, businesses of any legal form. We also support governments in rationalizing tax policies, as well as training them on any developments, in the world. Yeah.
Chris, are we overtaxed in this country, or are we undertaxed? As experts, we talk about this all the time. We are an overtaxed society. Are we or are we not?
That's a very good question, and perhaps how do we answer that question? If we could only compare ourselves with other countries, I'll take a regional comparison quickly, and then we would compare with, say, some of the leading countries, say in Africa. When you look at corporate income tax, that's tax paid by corporates. We are at 30%. We compare, with the region. I think the region, everyone is at 30%. Regionally, when I say region, say Africa region, South Africa is at 28%. Nigeria is at 30%.
Thereabouts, yes.
Thereabout. So we compare.
Okay.
Yeah, when you talk about, because in the dichotomy of taxes, we have taxes on income and taxes on consumption. Or tax on goods and services. So when you look at tax on goods and services, your VAT, excise, in the region, we are our VAT rate is 16%. I think all the other countries in the region are 18%. South Africa is 15%. Nigeria is about 7.5.
Exactly.
7.5%. Yeah. So again, in the region,
we compare
just by the headline rates. You would find that we compare, but don't be fooled. I think that the range of goods that are taxed is where the issue is.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Explain
while the rate
that.
might be lower,
you're taxed for more things.
Yeah.
You're taxing everything.
Yeah.
Is it possible then, and maybe this is not, both of you can help, because many have said that if you're looking at running a nation, because you said then the thing is now to compel everybody, whether you're working for someone or for yourself, to pay your taxes, because essentially that is what would run the nation. Is it possible to run an entire nation on taxes alone?
I'll let them go first.
Yeah, that's a sizable question. But my answer would be yes. Because to me it boils down to what are you running the nation on? What are you spending on? You understand where I'm coming from? If today you were to make 100 shillings, that is the money that you have in your pocket.
Right.
Then, do you have an option to pick money from elsewhere? You don't. You only have 100 shillings in your pocket. Can you run yourself with 100 shillings? Can you manage your affairs with 100 shillings? I would say yes. Make that 100 shillings work for you. So, in my view, we can actually collect taxes, and if that number arrives at whatever number it is, we use that money to run our country and arrive at a position where we say, this is where we've reached this year. Let's wait and see what we can do again next year. So that the 100 shillings I've collected today will serve me for today. And tomorrow I look for a new 100 shillings that will move me a step closer towards what I intend to achieve. So it is possible. In my view, it is possible. It's just a matter of what do you prioritize to spend on.
I almost hear you saying that nations then don't need to borrow.
No one needs to borrow. No one needs to borrow. You borrow only because you feel that you want to spend on something which you do not have the finances for.
At present.
At the time.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is why then you go out and borrow. But if we lived by the mantra of live within your means, then everyone would just live within their means. If it is the 100 shillings that you have, make it work for you. But if you feel that you want to spend 120, yet you have 100, then you have to find somewhere to get the 20.
But then that also sounds, and Chris, you can come in, like you're saying, if you say that you shall only live within your means, then development, forget about development. If you live within your means, if it's 100 bob and then you're able to only live within 100 bob, that's the current quality of lifestyle that you shall have, you shall afford. How do you improve on that? How do you get into a bigger house? How do you, buy better clothes?
Right.
How do you
compete?
Then that's when you have to go and borrow. So borrowing is like saying, if you want to really improve, then you have to look at what other sources of income or money you can get, so that then you can invest and grow. Is that?
Yeah. Well, he makes a good point. To live within your means. It's also business, finance knowledge that if you really want to expand, then you might also need some gearing. And other than nations that have certain extractive, minerals that earn them, a whole lot of forex, that they really do not need to borrow, they are sufficient to that extent, you would find most nations then need to borrow to develop and then repay.
Okay.
But they are fundamental assumptions that, what you're making, you're not spending all of it. So that you're left with nothing to repay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So even from a personal level, if you take a loan, you must be able to service that loan. Otherwise, if you spend all your income, how will you repay the loan?
Okay.
Yeah.
You ask a question. I mean, that question that you've just then posed at the end of that seems to be the situation in which country is right now. So there's a 3.3 trillion, I beg your pardon, budget that's going to be presented today. And from previous budgets having been read, we already know whether it was the finance minister at the time or the CS at this time, says that the bulk of this budget will be realized through taxes, right? And then there's some borrowing that will take place, whether at the domestic or external level. And then, here and there, other things that may come in with donor support, etc., etc. In the last few years, we've seen the debt burden rise significantly in the country. Would you then, and it seems that thereafter there have been other new tax measures that have been brought about, and it would be clear to the eye that it is to make the budget that these new tax measures have been put in place. Is that I don't want to use the word right, but I'm going to use it. Is that a right way to go, to now try and be more creative in the collection of tax in order to realize your budget as a nation?
Can I go first? Yeah, so that I don't know whether it's unfortunate, but the reality is we start with the expenditure. So we want to spend 3.3 trillion. We don't have money.
We work backwards.
So where are we going to get money from? You see?
Yeah.
Then we realize, we're only able to raise, say, 2.1
from
trillion.
tax.
Yeah. So, and from taxes is about 1.7, 1.8 trillion.
Yes.
So this is what we're able to get. But we still want to spend 3.3. I hope you get
the dilemma.
The dilemma or
the 3.3 seems to be cast in stone.
Yeah.
Everything else is a variable.
Yes. So everything else is a variable. We have to spend 3.3 trillion. Part of that 3.3 is an ever-rising recurrent expenditure.
Yeah.
Basically, people, per diems, people going on benchmarking, things that we really do not need, things that we could cut back on, and therefore reduce the 3.3, to a manageable level.
Yeah.
So that we only focus only on the most critical, of course, because we need social, protection. Again, we also need to develop. We are among League of Nations and we are competing. So we certainly need to, put our country, at a competitive advantage. So once we reduce that, you will find that we will reduce the gap or the deficit to a manageable level. And then once we get that loan, we apply it, value for money, not a whole lot of wastage, such that, we are able to achieve the most with the least.
It's basically how we apply everything that
Exactly.
Why do we have to start on that? We must spend 3.3 trillion shillings, Brian.
That's a question I've asked myself a number of times, Eric, and I sincerely wish, as Chris says, that we would interrogate that number. Why do we have to start with 3.3? I suppose someone in government, in treasury, sits down and says, this is what we think we should be spending on in order for us to be at a position where, as a country, we can pride ourselves of calling ourselves Kenyans. So then that number comes up. It is 3.3. And we then start looking around. Where can we collect as much as we can? As Ndu said, then that forces someone to say, can we collect a bit more from the taxpayer? Can we collect a bit more from our donor community? Can we collect a bit more from whatever, ministries, parastatals, anywhere we can find as much money as we can. And then once all that is settled, then let's look at who it is who is willing to lend us some money for us to be able to finance our needs. Why we start with 3.3, Eric, I sincerely do not have a response. As Chris has said, I think we should interrogate that number and bring it down as much as possible. Since 2019, they've been telling us austerity measures, but we don't then get an opportunity to audit them and say, did we actually achieve the austerity measures that we intended to achieve? We said that we wanted to carry out a zero-based budget so that we reduce our expenditure as much as possible. Do we then, at a later stage, interrogate and say, did we achieve what we intended to achieve? Despite borrowing, and you have alluded to our debt numbers increasing by the day, despite all that, do we actually achieve what we intended to achieve? That is the question. And sadly, we sit here when that budget is being read, but we don't sit at a later stage and interrogate and say, what you presented to us in between April and June, did you actually achieve it? Did you actually live by that plan? Because it is a plan. Did you live by that plan? Did we have variances? What caused those variances? What can we do better not to have those variances going forward? Those, to me, are the fundamental questions. And sadly, we do not sit at a later stage and ask ourselves those questions.
Probably, Brian, is because we are not sincere as a nation, not just the mandarins of the National Treasury, but all of us. Because who wants to see budget cuts? Who wants to see those austerity measures? When you're talking about austerity measures, what are they? When Uhuru Kenyatta was Minister for Finance, he drove to Parliament in a Passat and said, in fact, austerity, we start. We are not going to spend more than 1,800 cc's on government vehicles. What do we see? We want to see our Mheshimiwa coming in a big vehicle with a flag. We don't want to see a Mheshimiwa coming in a small Passat. And a convoy.
Yeah.
We are the ones who are like that. So the Treasury CS, whether it's Uhuru, whether it's Mwiraria the late, whether it's Ukur Yatani, will have to contend with having a recurrent expenditure that is just spiraling out of control. Because where is this money being spent? If you talk about meetings and hotels and per diems, hotels in Naivasha have been complaining. Look, Bwana, the government is now taking money to Nakuru and not bringing money to us. Now we are the ones who are complaining that the government is not spending money on us. And then we say we want recurrent expenditure to be cut. Are we sincere, Chris?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's a very, very good question. I think based on what you've basically said, I think we are not. And we are also not vigilant in, like you're saying, interrogating and, analyzing the expenditure. We really are, we all want to work with the government, so we want the government to spend on us, spend with us. Then later on we question the same government for all the expenditure, perhaps.
Reserve it. Okay, so now we're talking about recurrent expenditure, which again eats into the bulk of the budget on an annual basis, right? It is the biggest spender, as it would be.
2.2 trillion shillings in this budget.
Right. Recurrent expenditure. So you think these are things that must happen, right? You've got to pay rent. You have to keep the lights on. You have to keep people happy. Pay them the salary on a monthly. Maybe buy some mandazis and put some flowers in the office. That kind of thing, right? Now, it would appear, though, that debt has become a part of this recurrent expenditure, that you are now paying off loans and it has to be done on a regular. Is this a dangerous trend?
It is. It is. Like I started off, I strongly believe that we should live within our means. The debt is spiraling. It basically means that we are not repaying as much as we are borrowing. You keep on borrowing. You today borrow 100, but you only repay 30. You repay 40. Then that number will keep on increasing. Mm-hmm. It's not a sustainable model. It is not. If anything, when we started off this discussion, we said, if you're going to borrow, make it a borrowing for purposes of development, as opposed to borrowing to finance part of your recurrent expenditure. Yes. But if currently our internal collections are lower than our revenue spend, our recurrent expenditure, then it means we are basically financing part of our recurrent expenditure from borrowings. What does that tell you? We are basically living outside our means.
So you're saying you should not borrow to eat and pay your rent. You should borrow to develop and then compete and get better, because they're saying, okay, I don't want to live in a rented house. I eventually want to build my own, right? So that is what you should be borrowing for.
Not to
as
buy
opposed
shoes.
To eat and buy shoes, kind of thing.
and shoes, Eric, might even be seen to be a luxury at some point, because when our parents and even a good part of our generation were going to school, shoes was indeed a luxury. So let's look at that simplistic basic need. You need to eat, you need a roof over your head, you need clothing to cover your body. That ideally you should be able to finance from your internal sources. Thereafter, let's interrogate ourselves and say, do we want to develop? To what extent do we think we should develop? How much can we develop? And then, as Chris said, what part of our income can we keep aside for purposes of repaying debts that we are borrowing?
Okay. Let's take a break. It's 28 minutes to 8. Kenya's biggest conversation. Brian Kangeta is a partner with Anderson Tax Advisory, and Christopher Kiratha is a tax and law partner at Ernst & Young. We are talking about the tax options. What options does CS Ukuri-Yatani have before him? How is he going to finance 3.31 trillion shillings expenditure for the next 1 year? Kenya's biggest conversation will be back shortly.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Brought to you by Colgate.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
The only way to live your best life is to create a balance between work, love, and play.
Smoking shisha and releasing things on your smoke like a Subaru.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you want God to give you a man who has a mission and a vision.
You may create an illusion of, because he's younger, he's interested in me or he likes me, but he's using me.
Text the word adult to 22840 to get the latest clips from Adults in the Room directly to your mobile phone. SMS adults to 22840.
The Adults in the Room. If I'm found guilty, there is no problem. I'm willing to serve. I have no problem. Jails are meant for human beings.
They say a society gets the leadership it deserves. If you have a corrupt, crooked and rotten society like we have in Kenya, then of course they will get that kind of a leadership.
I think the president should dissolve parliament. That's the best solution at this moment in time. Dissolve parliament.
All of you go home.
Yes, we all go home.
How are we encouraging other people who might have new and creative ideas
young people who are making money without any government help. They are just buying their own bundles, they are going on TikTok and making money. KRA is coming after them.
I've been in parliament for 15 years. We have been unable to pass the gender law, and yet no presidential candidate is talking about it now. Because we are fake. The truth is, all the men refused to vote for that law.
What did Sonko do to Pumwani Maternity Hospital?
Yeah, he
with
cleaned
his
it up.
own money.
Cleaned it with his own money. That was him as an individual.
Yeah. And I did not say he was cleaning his own money. I was saying he cleaned
Foot, mouth. Foot, mouth. Eric.
Okay.
The situation.
Cloudy conditions. Rain is beckoning in Nairobi. Highs of 27 and lows of 16 today. It's 15 and sunny in Nakuru. Highs of 29 and lows of 14. It's sunny at 15 in Nyeri. Highs of 26 and lows of 14. And we'll see sunny conditions in Eldoret going to highs of 26 and lows of 14. Sun is out as well in Mombasa. Highs of 33 and lows of 26. While in Malindi, it's sunny at 28. We'll see highs of 33 and lows of 27. It's mostly sunny in Kisumu at 20. Highs of 29 and lows of 19, while it's sunny in Kakamega at 20, highs of 31 and lows of 16. We're looking at sunny conditions in Kampala at 20, going to highs of 29, while 32 will be the high in a sunny Dar es Salaam. Cleared conditions at 9 in Johannesburg, highs of 21 today, while Lagos is clear at 26. We'll see highs of 33, and Kinshasa is cloudy at 25, highs of 33 and lows of 24. Everybody getting into the city from the Thika Superhighway today slows down a little bit. A couple of accidents there, unfortunately, this morning and have slowed things down. We're looking at bumper-to-bumper traffic all the way through to Muranga Road today, and also coming off of Kiambu Road. That's already started to build up quite some. We're also looking at some traffic on Gong Road, Raila Odinga Way. A little bit of traffic there heading off of Langata Road. Langata Road traffic has improved significantly over the last couple of days. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, that will remain just so. We're looking at Uhuru Highway getting into the city and then out towards Westlands. Some traffic there, and coming out of Jogger Road, normal traffic in the morning. Mombasa Road doesn't look too bad. A little bit of traffic spilling over to Outer Ring and then onto from the North Airport Road. Apart from that, folks, let's take a look at what it looks like in a short while. Talk to us about what's going on in your neck of the woods on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
All right, it's 23 minutes to 8. Kenya's biggest conversation. It continues. Eric Latiff and Okoh. City Muga is away. He's enjoying his time off. Our guests this morning are two. We've got Christopher Kirathe from Ernst & Young, and we've got Brian Kangeta from Anderson Tax Consultants. And now we're looking at the 2022-2023 budget. Total budget 3.32 trillion shillings. The current expenditure expected to be 2.2 trillion. Interest payments 688 billion, wages 561 billion, pensions 150 billion. Counties are going to get 407 billion shillings. Development goes to 712 billion, external borrowing 570, domestic borrowing 276, and revenue collections are 2.43 trillion shillings. So revenue collections here, Chris, what does it mean? It's tax plus what else?
Appropriations in aid.
Yeah, what are those?
Those will be the charges that ministerial or ministries, charge. So
like when we pay pipeline for using the pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The money that pipeline makes.
Most ministries and parastatals would have some little charges that they charge here and there that not necessarily tax, like when you
cabs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All that. So all that plus tax, 2.4 trillion. And you are financing a budget of 3.3 trillion.
Yes.
And like you said, Brian, your budgeting 101 is you start with how much what your income is, and then you budget around that and see, so can this finance my lifestyle? But in government, like we've seen, not just with this particular CS, we have seen, we start with, so what are our needs? We have to pay for this house, we need to take our children to school, we need to, and the school they're going to is this, we need to do this and the other, we need to develop, we need to pay our salaries, we have pension, we have this, we have the other. So it all comes down to 3.3 trillion shillings. Now, what do we do?
Yeah, Eric, as I said earlier, when I was studying to become an accountant, one of the subjects we learned was budgeting, and budgeting basically started off with a top number, which is a revenue number, as opposed to an expenditure number. So my belief is we can throw out this budgeting approach, just throw it out of the window, and start afresh. You know, why don't we start by looking at what we expect to make? If KRA collected taxes last year or last financial year of 1.7 trillion, let's challenge them a bit more and say, guys, give us maybe 1.8 trillion, okay, in an inflationary adjustment. Then look at appropriations in aid. Chris has spoken about that. How much of that is coming in? Yeah. Then do we have any investments as a country? The expressway might be getting us some money as well. I don't know. We still need to repay part of that before we start counting it as revenue. But arrive at a revenue number. Then look at what are our primary needs. And that's now going back to answer your question, Ndu. That indeed, if everything worked the way it should work, we should be able to run a country purely based on our revenue. If everyone borrows, then who are we borrowing from? Ask ourselves. If everyone is borrowing, then who are we eventually borrowing from? Is someone
Brian, you're an austerity guy, Brian.
Is there someone is there someone who's borrowing in order to lend to us? And if that person is borrowing in order to lend to us, they're making money off us. They're making money off us. And who is this eventual? Let's call him the ultimate lender. Who is this ultimate lender?
With an infinite resource.
Exactly.
Right.
So you're already budgeting for someone else. You're actually pulling in someone into your budget and saying, boss, you lend me 570 million. 570 billion next year.
Yeah.
You're actually pulling that guy's resource into your budget.
I mean, look, if we can be prescriptive then, I mean, just from what we've seen in terms of trends, what you know to be proper practice when it comes to these things, what can we say should be, what would you suggest? When this budget process took place months ago, because, I mean, we keep saying that he's announcing the budget today, but it was not a midnight oil burning kind of thing that they did last night. It was months of preparation. In that room, in those rooms, when they were preparing, what would have been the suggestion? And where would the resource come from? What would it have been said that, folks, this is what we ought to do, and this is where the money will come from?
It gets more interesting because over and above already having a fixed expenditure, we budgeting really is about projecting for the future. So you make certain assumptions. So some assumptions that are made for revenue collection. So we are we are widening the tax base.
Yes.
We've recruited this number of taxpayers. Then you interrogate that and you realize these are actually students who have been made to get pins because of something, of a service. Old people, nowadays, even to open an account, you
must have a PIN number.
Then you count that as widening
and
your
you say
tax
that this
base,
is a potential
and
taxpayer.
you use that to forecast revenue.
Is that what happens?
That used to happen. And it used to be made
So they just look at the number of PIN numbers that have been registered by KRA and they say those PIN numbers are...
Until we started interrogating and hey, hang on. No. Most of these will be non-filers or even nil filers. So there is no income that's going to come from that. The other thing that is you will hear quite often is, we are targeting the informal sector, as part of also widening the tax base. And we have certain, tax, measures, the presumptive taxes, assuming these people pay this much.
Then we will get this.
Then they pay tax in advance.
Yeah.
Turnover taxes. And of course, the assumption is that these people are under-taxed or they underpay tax. But you realize and you also overestimate the income they make.
Mm-hmm.
So you are overestimating a Kibanda person makes this much, so they should pay this much. But you realize they paid a whole lot of licenses for that.
Already.
Yeah. And licenses themselves are taxes. So you realize you have all this forecast of we shall widen the tax base of, and there's nothing.
But why does this happen? And I keep asking this. We know for sure that the people who work at the National Treasury are people who have extensive experience. They are well learned. They know issues of tax far better than many of us do. They're people like yourselves. Why would they sit and do all those things that you're saying? Why would they just look at collection of PIN numbers and say, these are potential taxpayers. We are widening the tax base, and they go and miscalculate how much they should be getting? Why would they do all these things?
Well, it's a very, very good question. And we ask ourselves the same thing.
That your contemporaries. I mean, these are people you guys meet with them on socials.
We actually do have a lot of discussions with them, as Brand will tell you.
Yeah.
And we give we represent taxpayers, so we actually say this is the reality.
Yeah.
But sometimes that reality is not taken on board, unfortunately.
Why?
Because we need to hit 2.3 trillion.
So it's a political...
I'm
so there'll be professionals there, but the overall thinking or the overall direction is a political direction.
Yeah, and remember also we used to have, tax again is policy, it's economic policy.
Yeah.
And when you also have tax administrators setting policy, you start going off tangent.
Okay.
Because the idea now becomes more of collection as opposed to tax as a policy for growth and development.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting that you say that, because it seems that along the line then you've forgotten what these taxes are supposed to really, really be for. What would you, Brian, suggest that money be spent on? We can almost guess, eyes closed, stick a finger in the wind, what the CS will say. The Big Four agenda, we know that's going to be on the budget. We know that defense will get a sizable chunk. We know education will get a sizable chunk. Health, maybe not as much as it ought to get. We know that development projects also we put on there. And the election will also be put on that budget. What would you spend money on going into the year with all factors remaining constant as they are? And with all the trends that we see, what would you say money should be spent on in this fiscal year coming?
Listen, we've spoken of the technocrats sitting in Treasury and the process of arriving at this budget. It's not an overnight thing. This is something that takes time, and it's well thought out. We ask ourselves why they're doing what they're doing, Eric. My response would be, you find yourselves caught between a rock and a hard place, because there's this number that we need to achieve, and when you look at your options, you start thinking, what can I play around with in order to present a palatable picture to the nation? So that then forces you to sit down, crunch numbers, come up with something which you think is actually workable. Ndu, to your question, what would I spend money on? I think it's there. It's actually out there. We can't change those facets where we expect to spend that money on. Education is key. We say, for example, that we need a well-educated populace. We need a well-educated voter community for us to be able to vote in the expected leaders who will guide our nation to wherever. Education is key. National defense is key. We still have a low access to power, electricity, energy in this country. So you'll need to allocate some money to that direction as well. We are heading towards a digital space. We are actually there. We are not heading there. We are actually there. So you still need to allocate some money towards the digital space, the ICTs of this world. We cannot shy away from development as well. So listen, the facets are there. What we need to spend on is known. The question is, can we play around with those numbers? When someone tells you we are going to spend 500 plus billion on education is key. But is there a number sitting somewhere, probably in ICT, that we can pull and say, no, we actually need to increase this number on education? I don't think you mentioned elections. I don't think anyone will mention elections. I don't expect anyone to say that we are going to spend money on elections. That number will just be hidden somewhere.
But it will be spent.
But it will be spent. Are there things that we can pull money from and say that our priority areas are power, education, ICT, and probably some developmental projects? Now, pull money from some of these recurrent areas and actually push it here. Or just kill the recurrent expenditure and say, let's stick with what we are doing and aim for better days. My view has always been that we should not aim to do 6-7 things at the same time. If we can prioritize and say that we only aim to achieve 2 things every year, let's sort out our health sector. Let's sort out education. It will not be sorted out 100%, but next year you'll have a lower allocation to education because you did the primary necessities in that education sector. So that now you're only just paying salaries for teachers and so on and so forth. But if we just target 2 or 3 things in a year, we can reduce our expenditure. And by reducing our expenditure, we reduce our deficit. Reducing our deficit means we reduce our debt burden. So my view would be, listen, we sit here as advisors, not just to private sector, but even to government. And sometimes I feel like they've run out of options. And it might then be necessary to call in a few heads and add the heads to that table so that we arrive at something that is... Yes, so that even when I sit here, you can ask me and ask me a genuine question. Brian, when you were in that room, what exactly did you guys...
What were you discussing?
Exactly.
Okay.
If I may,
yes,
Eric. Yeah, so if I could add to what Brian has said, we have Vision 2030. We set that for ourselves. And we are getting onto the 4th medium term.
Yeah.
So we said we will achieve certain things at certain points, and depending on where one is, we could all judge what has happened.
Yeah.
But one thing for sure is we've been big on infrastructure, and we've tried on other things, education as well. Upskilling, I would say, health as well.
Yeah.
And then the one thing, in my view, that has really been forgotten is really agriculture. And that's a primary, sector. Yeah?
Yep.
If you look at the budget statement for the last, I think from 2013, they have one statement that keeps recurring. We prolonged drought, delayed long rains, poor weather.
Yeah.
We changed the wording so that it doesn't look
like we're saying
the
same thing.
Like we are saying the same thing. But the message is very, very clear. We are hopelessly dependent on rain.
Yeah.
And agriculture, we say, is the backbone of this country. And employees a lot, because whoever is not in formal employment
is in agriculture,
and they are not in the service, whatever, they are actually in agriculture.
Yep.
So we are talking of a whole population that we are really not focusing on. By not focusing on that, we affect other sectors that depend on agriculture, agro-processing. So that's manufacturing, service industry, hospitality, hotels and all the mama mbogas that say we have resorted to importing.
What should we do if we were to spend on agriculture? Where would the money go?
Look, we because we are a country that likes to benchmark, we know that Middle East is really turning deserts into
oases.
We have a whole vast land. We have government land that should be leased to people who want to farm.
Going to commercial farming.
We should have deliberate tax policies and incentives to incentivize people who want to do large-scale farming and land consolidation. So land use, of course, policy also comes in. So we should have that. Things like fertilizer. We just the other day, it's been subsidized now, but it was going to 8,000.
Yep.
That's something that we are relying on for our primary sector of agriculture. Do you see some mixed or inverted priorities there?
Yet we say, food security is one of the pillars of the Big Four agenda.
Yeah.
So in every budget in the last 4 years, we've been spending money on the Big Four. And so you're saying that you don't feel like even financing the Big Four has gone into the proper enablers of the Big Four.
Well, I would say that. I mean, we are yet to get the real result
of the Big Four
of Galana Kulalu. We know we've had some interventions. We have some dams that are coming up. Others have failed. But remember, that's only in certain areas. What about the whole large tracts of land lying idle? What are we doing to incentivize people to do large-scale farming like we do here? Because we have the land. You see, we have the land. We have for people to mechanize.
And it's arable land. As we conclude the conversation, a couple of things. We obviously are going to see some widening of the tax bracket, some new taxes maybe being introduced, or some more people being brought into that tax bracket. Where should we expect the hit as a Kenyan? We're wearing gloves, we're wearing helmets, we're wearing shin guards and all. Where should we expect a big hit?
Well, just doing a situation analysis.
Yep.
It's an election year, number one. So, and I think maybe the outgoing regime has a stake in seeing
in the incoming.
So probably they may not want to mess, and by mess is increased taxes. At least those that touch on the common man. So globally, there has been a move from direct to indirect taxes, because indirect taxes on consumption, you catch a wider,
base of people.
But here you cannot touch that because you'd be taxing.
You can't touch unga. You can't touch
unga. But we've seen excise being used. Traditionally, excise is a sin tax on luxurious items and things. But in Kenya, we, other than just the basic,
everything has become a sin.
Tax. Yes, we want to tax everything. So we could see that as well. Of course, there has been an effort to use data to catch tax cheats. And there is a law that allows KRA to snoop and get third-party information. Who knows what could go to M-Pesa? There's a lot of cash
that is floating around.
Why? So we would expect that. Obviously, there is a move to tax the high net worth, and there is capital gains could also. We have a law.
The rich are going to be taxed more. Get it. Get it, Chris. Get it. Anyway, Chris, Thank you guys for coming this morning. 1 hour is a short time, but we've had some good, at least, conversation into understanding the thinking behind our taxes. Chris Kirathe is a tax and law partner at Ernst & Young, and Brian Kangeta is a partner at Anderson Tax Advisory. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Let's all watch what Okoh Tani will be saying. Of course, we'll be reaching out to you and asking you, so where are those hidden taxes? In fact, that's the assignment that we give you as you live here. Please go and just note for us the hidden taxes, and then when we call you, you'll tell us.
This is where it is.
This is where it is. Asante sana.
Thank
Keep
you
it
very
here
much.
for more conversations coming up in the next hour. It's 8 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4
This
Spice
is Newsround.
FM.
Dennis Aseto. Director of Public Prosecutions Nurdin Haji has dismissed allegations of nepotism in his office's conduct of recruitment for jobs. This follows a petition by activist member Ocharo, who went to court seeking to stop the interviews scheduled for April 25th and 28th. Ocharo in his petition claimed that the DPP had shortlisted candidates from his ethnic and religious group in some positions. ODPP Chief of Staff Lillian Obuo in a statement quashed the allegations, saying the office is mandated with ensuring equality around the country, hence religious background of applicants is inconsequential. Now getting to South MP Moses Kuria has filed a case at the Milimani Law Courts challenging IEBC's decision to summon him over election rigging remarks. He claims that his right to a fair hearing and fair administrative action have been violated, adding that IEBC has assumed jurisdiction it lacks. Kuria argued that IEBC has proceeded to assume non-existent jurisdiction and the law to harass him. He claims that he honored the said summons. However, he accused the commission of turning it into a hearing despite having failed to give him a prior notice. Now, the government has announced plans to review the curfew that was imposed in parts of Lamu County in January this year, following a wave of attacks that claimed at least 7 lives and left families displaced. In a statement, Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i said the review will be made following a meeting with security officials in the coast region. The Interior CS was speaking at the Kenya Coast Guard Services headquarters in Luatoni. In January this year, the National Security Council declared 4 divisions within Lamu West and Lamu Central sub-counties as disturbed areas, imposed a curfew and ordered the deployment of special security units to contain the security situation. At the same time, Matiang'i noted that the government had ramped up security along the Kenyan coastline and in other water bodies in the country as part of the preparations for the general election. Inspector General of Police Hilary Mutyambai has now directed police officers not to effect any eviction orders unless he expressly clears them. This is after increasing complaints of police being involved in illegal evictions of Kenyans that are normally done in an inhumane manner. The IG was speaking before the Senate Devolution Committee that is investigating evictions in Pumwani and Isli estates. Mutyambai maintained that the role of the police was only to provide security and ensure law and order. In an emotional session that saw those evicted shedding tears at the Senate has reprimanded the police for perpetrating illegalities against common Kenyans. The evicted Kenyans, who are workers of Nairobi Water Company, narrated how the police evicted them in the dead of night without any notice. And 2 police officers have been suspended following an incident in which they roughed up a man in a Kasarani bar, only to discover that the man was their superior. After an altercation sparked by a woman smoking in the bar, Constables Marwa Matiko and Charles Maina allegedly harassed Jackson Owino, the Kayole DCIO. Owino had taken his car to Seasons Lounge for a wash on March 26th, according to a police report. While at the bar, he approached the woman Elizabeth Wangari, who was smoking in a no-smoking zone. Owino then asked her to stop smoking, but she responded with insults, saying, "You should know people," before storming out and coming back with the 2 officers who roughed him up. Now, over 1.2 million students who completed their Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examination last month will have their 4-month selection results on Tuesday next week. Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoa affirmed that the selection process is almost over and the students shall be informed of the schools they will join come next week. Magoa further noted that the selection process will be conducted under an all-inclusive criteria that will see students from different parts of the country and different backgrounds get to enroll with top schools, particularly those who excelled. Now, the Orange Democratic Movement's party primaries in Kilifi and Mombasa counties will take place on April 8th and 9th respectively. This is according to the party's National Elections Board, which had postponed the exercise that had originally been slated for Monday and Tuesday. Muma likewise revealed that the party primaries in two Turkana wards slated for Saturday will also proceed as planned. And Starehe Member of Parliament Charles Jaguar, popularly known as Jaguar, has dismissed claims that he has dropped his political aspirations ahead of the upcoming August polls. This follows talks that the Starehe MP, who was looking to defend his seat under a UDA ticket, has allegedly shelved his aspirations in favour of former Ihala MP Simon Muga after some persuasions from Deputy President William Ruto. The legislator likewise added that he was not open to the idea of stepping down for any other candidate, citing that he is looking forward to UDA's nomination primaries slated for April 14th. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Seto. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, a few minutes after 8 o'clock, still seeing some traffic on the Thika Superhighway, and that's going into the city today. It's slow on Jogo Road here and there, but nothing too crazy. On Uhuru Highway, getting out towards the CBD and then out towards Westlands, not too bad. Ring Road Westlands taking a hit, but not too crazy. Also on Wayaki Way, don't forget you can use the Red Hill Link Road to get off that drama that is there. The Thika Superhighway continues as it does on Kiambu Road. And what does North Airport Road look like now? A little bit better. We have some coming from Lunga Lunga, going then towards Outer Ring, and the Eastern Bypass has been heavy since morning. North Airport Road also taking off some off of Mombasa Road, coming from the Weybridge out towards the SGR and beyond is manageable. How about we keep it just so? And then let's talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation
7
Room.
minutes after 8.
The only
Good
way
morning.
to start
Welcome
your
to
day.
Kenya's biggest conversation if you're just joining us on this 7th day of April 2022. It's March, but we say April. It's March because, cost of power Kenya was supposed to come down by the end of March. This is a pledge made by the President on Jamhuri Day, that by the end of March, we'll get the second tranche of 15% reduction in power bills. Now, because that hasn't been announced, we are still in March.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We cannot go to the end of March. Of course, we know the other one is the issue of the expressway. It's complete, by the way. Ndu.
The expressway is complete.
It's done. The only thing now is the president's diary.
It'll be complete when the president drives on it. When he commissions
when he commissions the road.
That is when you
And
say
he said
it
he wants to commission it in March
2022.
2022.
Okay.
This
so
year.
because these things have not happened, we are still in March.
It's still in March.
Nisawa.
Yes. Okay. Until they happen. Until the day you see the president has commissioned the expressway, we will be in March. Until you hear or you read a statement from, where should it come from? The last one came from IPRA on the cost of power.
Yes.
So unless another one comes from IPRA, or the Cabinet Secretary for Energy, or the Managing Director of the Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Power, telling us about the reduction of power bills. We are still in March. Yes?
We might be here for a while.
Lest you forget, we keep track of all these pledges by government. The CS for the National Treasury will be in Parliament this afternoon. He'll be making more pledges. Oh, you know, this and the other. Anyway, before we begin all these other conversations, the day's proverb, it's from Malawi. Blow your horn in a herd of elephants. Crow in the company of cockerels. Bleat in a flock of goats. When you are in a herd of elephants, blow your horn or trumpet. When you're in a company of cockerels, crow. When you are in a flock of goats, bleat.
Okay. When in Rome, do as the Romans do.
That's it, huh?
Yes.
Simplified it. When in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Right.
Okay. I was telling you about my experience. I went to the Nairobi Expressway office yesterday.
Yes, you
Told
did.
you I would do that.
You did, and
Yes?
you did.
So they have information is out there. So they have various ways of actually getting the people to use the expressway when they finally launch it. One of them is having this gadget installed on your vehicle that does automatic deduction of money as you use.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the others will be where you go to the toll station and you find an attendant at the toll booth and you pay for the use of the road. So I did this one, the long-term one. It's like having, so you'll have either you can pay at the toll booth using cash or maybe M-Pesa, and they'll also have a card that they'll roll out. It'll be sort of like a mega rider. So you just go in there and you tap and it deducts from the money that you've topped up into your card, or you have this thing that is scanned at the ETC lane. So go register, long queues. People have already started, excitement of getting there to register to start using the expressway. What are you required to do? Show up there with your original ID and the logbook of your vehicle. I'm not sure I understand why the logbook of the vehicle, but yeah, the logbook of the vehicle. And if it's a company card and somebody who's authorized to come there with that logbook is the one who appears. And if you are driving somebody else's car, the owner of the vehicle is the one who should come. Who should write an introductory letter to Moja Transport, who are the operators of the expressway. So all that whole process, there are people who were there, they were complaining that taken like 2 hours. It's just because of inefficiencies. Teething problems, our system not working, and then they've got to come out and fix this gadget on your vehicle. And after doing all those things, and you're told you can pay a service charge of 1,000 shillings and you top up a minimum of 2,000 shillings, or you can pay 5,000 shillings and you get a discount so you not pay a service charge. After you've done all those things, then you're like, okay, now can I use the road? You're told.
Not yet. It's not yet ready. Okay.
Not yet. I was given a brief tour, though, by expressway people. So I used a bit of the expressway. So it goes, yes, it scans, it opens for you. Go in and out.
It works.
We'll wait and see. We will wait and see. When people get to the toll booth and they're like, kodi nimetumia pesa ngapi?
Does it deduct it? But it doesn't deduct yet. That hasn't started happening yet.
Yeah, when the ones that you're going to pay using cash, getting there and then they tell you M-Pesa is not working today. Issues. Anyway, CS for the National Treasury, Okoh Yetani, will be in Parliament this afternoon. He'll be presenting the next financial year's budget, 3.31 trillion shillings, hoping to be raised. He will be telling us, of course, the way they always do, all finance ministers, from Mwai Kibaki in his days, to George Saitoti in his days, to all of them, start by, Mr. Speaker, we have done very well. Mr. Speaker, in fact, the money that we were spending last year, we have put it into very good use. For that reason, the impact is this. Okoh Yetani will tell us, because of our proper management of our finances, our healthcare has improved. Now we have more health facilities in the country. We have more critical care beds in the country. This is one thing I'm sure he's going to mention. Two, he'll mention infrastructure. He'll talk about the X number of kilometers that they've constructed in the last financial year, or even in the last 4 or 5 years. He'll talk about the number of kilometers of new roads. He'll talk about the number of kilometers of, upgraded roads, of new repairs, the ongoing projects. There's a Dongo Kundu bypass. There's, the expansion of the Eastern bypass. All those things he will talk about. He'll also talk about how the last financial year's budget was also meant to be an economic stimulus, to stimulate the economy from the ravages of COVID-19 and the impact of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, sir, we spent money on Kazi Mtaani, X amount of money, and for that reason, X number of youth were employed and were involved in this. We have spent money on healthcare. We have put in a lot of money to support our local craftsmen who are building classrooms across the country. And as you've been seeing from the CS for Education, Professor George Magoha going around and inspecting, more and more classrooms have been built because we spent 8 billion shillings to build classrooms. Mr. Speaker, we have spent the money very well.
Well, it could be said, but then I think that's it. That was the measure of success. That if the things that you've said this was supposed to be used for in the very beginning, it actually happened, then you can say, okay, yes. Was the economy adequately stimulated? And that is what it was meant to do in the first place. There are many things, though, that would appear as though they're going to dog this process, right? One of them being servicing costs is a big thing. We talk about recurrent expenditure. How is it actually going to happen? It's one thing to say something. It's another thing to realize what has come as a result of the same. Without borrowing, the government will scarcely be able to implement its key programs, including election-related projects, the Big Four agenda, cash transfer programs, as you've mentioned, subsidies for fuel and fertilizer, as well as other initiatives targeting farmers in the tea, sugarcane and coffee sectors. The higher debt load is set to further increase annual debt servicing costs, which stand at 1.17 trillion shillings this year, shrinking the budget for development. Because of the debt burden, the budget for development obviously will be affected. And that means that you will not be able to do as much as you wanted to do. Who follows up after a budget has read and has kicked into the process and said, really, have we been able to do what was set out to be done by the time the CS stood with his briefcase on the steps and said, this is it?
Who follows up?
Who follows up thereafter and says, actually, you know what? We hear the Auditor General telling us every now and then we've checked this and we've checked this. There seems to be a discrepancy here or there. But in terms of the process, we wanted to stimulate. This is an economy stimulating budget. Who's gone through the checks and balances thereafter and said, actually, yes, with what was injected here, we have seen that as a result of this action, we've stimulated the economy.
Or constantly checking. There are people who are employed to do that, and they're employed by taxpayers, and they're called members of parliament, right? They're the ones who approve a budget. They go, they sit there, the CS will be presenting the budget before them and seeking their approval. He will walk out, they will sit back, and they will vote on it, okay? You'd expect that they're the ones who, because they have interrogated this budget and saying, this is how the government wants to spend this money in the next financial year, this is what we expect to be seeing in terms of milestones.
I'm glad you said
so. As we're having this,
they would do it.
As we're having these conversations, we'll be looking periodically and seeing how are we doing with Kazi Mtaani, how much money has been spent, how many are our constituents feeling the impact of this money going to their pockets. Or is it working or is it not? But maybe I'm wrong. And somebody who is a seasoned parliamentarian joins us now in the studio. Bill Okoh is a former senator of Mandera County. He's also been a member of the National Assembly. Mheshimiwa, welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
It's good to have you finally. I mean, we've been having these conversations. You know, one time you're able to come, then something else comes up. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Is it true? Am I right when I say that members of parliament are the ones who are supposed to be checking on the implementation of the budget?
Yes, you are very right. The buck stops with them.
Yeah.
The members of parliament actually get quarterly expenditure reports from Treasury, which sets out how the money has been spent. Once the budget has been approved throughout the year, there'll be expenditure. So they get quarterly reports on how this money is being spent, whether they're spent according to the budget. And of course, ultimately, the auditor will do audit later, but they do that regularly. And even when the auditor does his audit, he submits the report to the parliament. So parliament, at the end of the day, its main responsibility is to provide oversight, and that is one of the key responsibilities of parliament, oversight over financial expenditure of the government. But the way budget is done, It's not like budget in your company or you would look back and say, how did we do last year's budget?
Right.
We had said we'll spend 100 million on this. How did we spend? No, they simply start from today and say what we want to do. They don't give, a report to Parliament on, last year's budget. Yes, we had 3.3 trillion and we said we'll do ABCD. This is what we have done. There's no audit. There's no review of how the expenditures for last year. So when the minister or the CS gives his budget today, he'll essentially be rolling out his outlook for next year and his proposed expenditures for next year. He will not look back to what happened or how he spent the money. He expects that to be covered in the reports that have been submitted already reports. And the auditors' reports and those things.
It's incredulous, below that. I mean, it's unbelievable that you want to plan forward with money that, or in this case without, and not having a historical perspective of what happened just 12 short months ago, and say that, look, this is what we planned to do, we're not able to do it, and now because of that, maybe this is how we should now tread cautiously into the future, or then, go big in the future. How do you then say you will budget for the future, not having taken into consideration what happened just over the last year?
It's incredible, but that's what happens. And the question you raised, earlier, when you allocate money to a particular project, say an investment like SGR, and you told Kenyans we need to put 500-600 billion into SGR. Why? Oh, we expect some returns. In the next 5 years, we expect the economy to grow by this because of that SGR. We expect our cost of freight to be lower, production costs will reduce and will become more competitive, and ABCD, and you need to. And at the end of the day, you need to submit a report and say, following that investment we had put in, this is what the government has realized in terms of the returns. And there's no audit, really. This is government. They want to avoid a situation where they will be held to account on where they have not performed. And I'll give you a simple example. Forget even the SGR is complex. You remember we were told every child will be given a laptop.
Yeah.
And a lot of tens of billions were spent in that area.
There was budgetary allocation for that
you
project.
Remember? Yeah. If you ask today how many kids have got laptops and how did that program go, those guys who started that time started once with laptops. How far they've gone with their laptops? I mean, they'll tell you there'll be probably nothing. It has collapsed. Then there was the 1 million. You remember Galana irrigation? They said we are going to put 1 million every year. We were allocating 10-12 billion to that project, and so it's endless. Those things are designed, they are approved, the money is gone, but there's no audit to try and go back and look back and say, gentlemen, that investment was not a good one. And so this is the challenge with government. There's a lot of politics.
And yet, the law plus also parliamentary standing orders expect Parliament to do that, to play the oversight role. Like you're saying, before Ukuri Yatani gets the go-ahead to start planning on how to raise money to finance 3.3 trillion shillings, Parliament has already said, it's okay, 3.3 trillion shillings you can spend. So there should have been scrutiny. Where exactly is every shilling going? So with that, Parliament is already aware. It's not going to be caught off guard when the first quarterly report comes in and shows how the money has gone. Parliament already knows. So is it not a failure of Parliament to understand the job that they're supposed to be doing?
It's a big failure of Parliament. And look at the new constitution. It gives considerable amount of power and leverage to members of Parliament on budget. This is not like the old constitution. Parliament plays a critical role in the budget making. Forget about the approval. Even in the making. Everything that the government does, the budget policy papers, everything is submitted to them well in advance. So that in terms of the budget strategy, in terms of the government policy, all those things must be approved first by Parliament. And it's based on that policy and the strategy, that then government Treasury prepares the estimates Say this is the area that we have been told focus on this in terms of strategy, in terms of policy, and this is where we are going to focus on. So money will be allocated to that particular area. So that's why there is a parliamentary budget office. That's why Parliament spends a lot of time. I mean, there is nothing. That's why documents are available. These things have been, all the figures on how the government expects to or intends to spend has already been published, weeks earlier. So because it has already gone through the Parliament. So, but where politics plays the center stage. Everything in this country, in Parliament, is about politics. And you've seen what is happening. Parliament has become an appendage of the executive. So they will do what the executive wants. At the end of the day, it's not really. When did you see the last time Parliament saying, sorry, this one we have rejected. This tax measure we are not approving. This expenditure has been declined. Treasury go back, cancel that expenditure. It's not very common, even if it's there.
Well, then it seems as if we're swimming in extremely dangerous and murky waters here. Because if a budget-making process has been made political, which, clearly, that's what we are even looking at now, whether the process the pre-process, the budget itself, and then the checking and oversight of how money was spent, or if projects actually were implemented, economy stimulated kind of thing. And that does not happen in the manner in which it ought to be happening. What are we saying then for the country? Where can you really say you are if the thing that's supposed to run the country then is being used, or rather is being sacrificed on the altar of politics?
Are you surprised? Look at it this way. We have had, this budget is 3.3, expenditure is 3.3 trillion. In the last, I think, 4 or 5 years, it's been above 3 trillion.
Yep.
That's, it will tell you in the last 5 years alone, it's 15 trillion. That's an awful lot of money. If you try and find out how many, projects or development projects, really, or activities that have been implemented in the last 5 years with that kind of money, because that's a huge amount of money, you'll not find much. I'm telling you. You'll be told SGR 1, SGR 2, and SGR 3 probably, and you'll struggle to get another major. So it's about misplaced priorities, really, at the end of the day. And this is why, despite all the money we're spending, you are told the number of Kenyans with clean water supply, it's still around 35%. The number of Kenyans who even have access to toilets, you find a situation where medicines are not available in hospitals. There are a lot of challenges. Our kids, you've seen schools that are in situations where, in conditions that sometimes you get surprised. You found the last 3, 4, 5 months, tens of thousands of animals have died for lack of, and people are dying for lack of food. And you have 3 trillion shillings. It's an awful lot of money. If you count how much money has been, and I like counting it, what this Jubilee administration has spent in the last 10 years. I can tell you, it's crazy. It's almost 30 to 40 trillion shillings. And it's huge. And just and
40 trillion shillings.
It's huge amount of money
in just the
10
last
years.
In 10 years, 40 trillion shillings. Are we
actually
saying
9
it is
years,
not possible to
Senator.
see in 9 years? It's not possible to see
30 to 40 trillion. Because
what 40
if your
trillion
budget
shillings
is
has done in the
3
country.
trillion plus in a year. That you ought to have done a lot in terms of addressing food security. Today we have a serious challenge in terms of food security in this country, and you know that. Many Kenyans dying for lack of food. All our foods, agricultural sectors, all of them are literally in crisis. Coffee, tea, things like sugar has collapsed. Maize. You talk about every sector in this country, livestock, fisheries. Tell me one sector that has grown to a point where we say we are very proud now. We are the largest exporters of coffee in in East Africa, or we are exporting our fish to EU countries, or we are doing, livestock. Somalia, I just mentioned earlier in another program, a country with no government. They export over 10 million heads of livestock annually. And Kenya's numbers is 1/10 of what Somalia exports, or half of what Ethiopia exports. And we are very, so I think our country's problem is what I've said, is about misplaced priorities. and of course, and mismanagement of resources. These two combined have been our Achilles heels.
So it's proper corruption, because when you talk about all that money, misplaced priorities, misallocation, misappropriated, it's just
the word is
theft.
not only corruption. I think I always use better words. It's poor leadership and bad governance. That's what it is, amounts to. I mean, if you don't put your money in the right place, it's about management. It's about leadership. It's about governance. It's not. Yeah, you may be putting the money, but you're putting it. That's the examples I've mentioned to you earlier of those projects which never took off, where money has been allocated. Now, when SGR came in, the intention was good. They said, we used to be the industrial hub for Eastern Central Africa. We became became less competitive, and because of high costs of freight, high cost of energy. So a lot of money was allocated, tens of billions every year for energy. To generate power from geothermal sources, which is the cheapest source of energy and clean. A lot of money was then spent on SGR to reduce the cost of freight and so forth. But let me ask any of the manufacturers, and they'll tell you the cost of energy has not gone down, it went up over the year. And you know that even from your household. It has only gone up, it doesn't look down at all.
No.
And the cost of freight has been the same, despite putting, every year we are spending hundreds of billions in infrastructure. But still, that's why now we are importing more from Uganda than exporting. It was our largest export destination. Our largest export trade partner in the world was Uganda. Today, we are importing more from them than
the balance of trade has shifted.
Tanzania, where they used to import everything from toothpaste to flour. Today, nothing. If you go to Namanga border, the trucks are only coming in. They're not going out.
Going out. And actually, that's true.
I mean, it's a fact. It's a fact. Because government has really not prioritized in terms of its investment, so that they can provide, conducive business environment to our businesses, so that we can be competitive.
Right.
So then we are just putting money in where we think it is right. The leader wakes up and say, "I wanted this project, and I wanted that." So he'll try. Years down the road, the money will have been spent, and then the project fails, and they say, "Okay, we move on.
We tried. Let's start something else."
We are on course to realizing that project.
Yeah.
It's 8:30. Let's take this break. Washimua Bilokero, former senator of Mandera County, is with us in the studio. We're talking about budget and where money should actually be spent when you talk about every year's financial budget. We've just mentioned water and sanitation. There are very many communities that don't have access to water and sanitation services. Not just in those perennial areas where, for example, you say, Mandera has water shortage, Wajir has water shortage. Even other counties such as Kisumu, Siaya, Kakamega, Migori, Kwale, Kitui, Homa Bay, even Nairobi have issues with water. Colgate has been working on that and going to schools, especially in those 7 counties that I've just mentioned. And so far, working with Well Boring, a UK non-governmental organization, they've provided some 90 water wells in the schools, helping the communities, and they want us to support them on that.
Indeed. Wanting to do more, definitely, and make sure that those who have not had access to water previously can do. We cannot express enough the life-changing benefits of providing a single water source in a community and what it actually will do for people. So you buy some Colgate at your supermarkets and you can be guaranteed that a portion of that goes towards sinking some more water wells and have people have access to this precious resource.
Indeed. They want to do 30 more wells just this year alone in these areas. And of course, then they'll expand to other areas as well. Kenya's biggest conversation takes a break at 28 minutes to 9. We are live on KTN Home, SpiceFM, and online, YouTube and Facebook. Back shortly.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Brought to you by Colgate.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
The group of leaders we are having now, these are just like the polymers. The chemical composition is the same.
Are you corruptible?
Hopefully not. And maybe that's part of the problem.
People who have done about 300 speeches and they are not saying anything. What makes you think that they will come in with something really dramatic?
Don't miss out on the latest from Kenya's biggest conversation. SMS TSR to 22840.
Sunny speaking through those clouds in Nairobi this morning. We will see highs of 27 and lows of 16 today. Nakuru is sunny at 18, highs of 29 and lows of 14. And we'll see sunny conditions at 17 in Nyeri, highs of 26. And lows of 14 today. It's sunny at 19 in Eldoret, highs of 26 and lows of 15. While Mombasa is sunny at 29, we'll see highs of 33. And we'll see highs of 33 as well in Malindi, where it's partly sunny at 29. 22 and sunny in Kisumu, highs of 29 and lows of 20. While Kakamega is sunny at 25, it'll go to highs of 31 and lows of 15. Kampala, sunny at 22. 29 will be the high and lows of 11, lows of 18. While it's 28 and sunny in Dar es Salaam, we'll see highs of 32 and lows of 26. 11 is what it is in Johannesburg. We'll see highs of 21 and lows of 9, while it's mostly clear at 26 in Lagos, going to highs of 33. We'll also see highs of 33 in Kinshasa, where it's mostly cloudy at 25.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
Really
You're
busy
listening
coming towards
to
the Maritime and inbound as well. We're looking at some of that spilling over to North Airport Road and then out towards Outer Ring. We'll have some bumper to bumper for some time, but it shouldn't be too bad for too long. Langata Road not looking too bad. We're seeing Uhuru Highway then clogging up just a bit as you're getting into the CBD. Rilo Dinga Way looks pretty good. We're seeing some back-to-back traffic on Jogo Road. And this is between Hamza and then out towards the stadium roundabout. It'll take some time to get through that. The Thika Superhighway has also behaved very well today. Now we're seeing just past the Utali Drift towards the underpass. Muthaiga Square then is something to contend with, having to keep an eye on things there. Kiambu Road, not too bad. Should diminish within the hour. Let's talk. SpiceFM. KE on Twitter. Text 40127.
Spice up your life.
"25 to 9, Kenya's biggest conversation continues on KTN Home, on SpiceFM and online. With you in the room is Eric Latiff, Ndu Okoh, and Bill Okero, former senator of Mandera County. He's with us. Mashimo, you are a finance professional. You therefore would also be a Treasury CS, with the right president in office. You can easily be the Treasury CS. Today, if you are the Treasury CS and you are the one presenting a budget for the next financial year, 22-23, what would your priority areas be for expenditure?
A tough question. When things have already been messed up, the first thing you would do is to try and
undo the mess.
Undo the mess, and it's not something that can be done in one budget. This is something that has happened over the years. But the single, in my view, biggest problem we've had in this country with regards to treasury, which I would be concerned about, is public expenditure. I would focus on how to reduce public expenditure, because if you reduce public expenditure, then you would reduce borrowing. If you reduce borrowing, you reduce taxes. I mean, it's common sense. If you and I mentioned earlier, look at it. You are spending 3.3 trillion, and you are saying your revenue is 2 trillion. If it's 1.3 deficit, 1.3 trillion you have to borrow. Nobody gives you free money. It's a loan.
Yep.
So even as you talk of how to deal with the people, you have already. So I would focus on reducing public expenditure. This government is living beyond its means. We live. You walk to any government offices. Government is really spending money unnecessarily. There are many things that are done, and I would really take a pencil. And this is why we said a few years ago we introduced program-based budgeting. Let's have a zero-based budget. Let's take a pen and pencil and work out what you need. Don't just take the previous budget and then say plus. There's
inflationary
I just add.
adjustments.
So the same. So there are many ways in which we are really spending money. This is a government that does everything.
What would you cut on then?
I mean, it's mostly in expenditures in the recurrent area where the government is living really conspicuously well. I mean, the government spends a lot of money on travel. The government spends a lot of money on consultancies and other related those kind of expenses. The government spends huge amounts of money on trying to do, particularly financing so many activities in various state corporations. You would be surprised that there are nearly 300-400 state corporations, from taxis, owning a company that runs a taxi, to anything, to another one that wants to put up a nuclear energy. So it's the things which are not a priority. You have this. I have the cheapest source of energy, geothermal, cheapest anywhere else in the world, and we have unlimited. Why do I want to spend billions trying to think about a nuclear? So I would say, really, it's possible for me to take the estimates and go through ministry by ministry, state office by state office, department, and reduce some of the expenditures and save money. That is the thing which they promise every year. If you look at today's budget, the first thing the minister will say, or the CS, is that I'm going to cut down that deficit. It's always around 9-10%. It says every year his pledges will bring it down to 6%, 5%, and then he's going to repeat it. They won't do it because nobody wants to touch any ministry. My ministry, I want to keep things the way they are. Another area that I will reduce, which is very important, is after devolution. The essence of devolution was to devolve functions down to the counties. And we did that. For example, in health, according to the Constitution, 95% of the health functions had been devolved, except for these referral hospitals, 3 of them in Nairobi. And the ministry was supposed to be just for policy. But today, I can assure you, nothing has changed. The same Ministry of Health that was there in 2002 is the same one that is there today, and they're getting even more money. They'll get tens of billions, nearly close to 60-70 billion.
Just for
water, and so you end up duplicating. And I'll give you a good example in water. All those regional water boards, even as we speak now, they're supposed to have been devolved. So national government doesn't want to devolve things. They want to hold on to some of those functions. So then what happens is we allocate tens of billions to those organizations. And you see them duplicating the same thing that happens in the counties. They want to put up some water pans. National government is putting up, CDF is putting up, county is putting up. So there's a lot of duplication also within government because, of the way the functions have not been streamlined, and where the functions are because national government wants to keep their role. The president and the ministers want to go to an area and say, I'm launching this road, I'm launching this project, I want this dam, I want to do that. So because they want to do that, they still allocate huge amounts of money to areas where those functions have actually devolved to the counties.
But do you think, Mheshimiwa, if you are the CS and you had a political head called the president and you have political colleagues in the cabinet and everything else around you, you would actually be able to say, let us cut back, let us reduce the money that we are allocating to the Ministry of Health because they are not doing the function of implementation, they are only a policy? Would you be able to? Realistically speaking.
That is why, Eric, I have no intention of joining government because you will not be given that latitude. It's not easy to get a leader who will allow his CS Treasury or any of his other CSs to do, to give an independent advice. Of course, you can. You can, as a CS, say, look, Mr. President, this is what we want to do. And this is where we should be going. This should be the direction. Let us not be spending money. We can cut down. Instead of increasing this budget to 3.3 trillion, let's reduce it to 2.5 trillion. And let's try and cut down and leave so that we can save money and don't borrow again. But not many people can do. But I can assure you, there are people who, if they are given that opportunity, can tell the president, no, I want to do that. If you're not willing to, then I don't think I'll be able to keep this job. I mean, but, in the way our politics is, the expectation is that you will do what the boss wants. You don't do it, then you'll be accused of being somebody who is whatever. So, that's where the challenge is.
It seems almost criminal to me, though, Bilo, that here you are having been presented with a job to do.
Correct.
you know what it is from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it is of political persuasion or whether it is actually of technical know-how and expertise, you know what it is that you're supposed to do. When we put this responsibility in the hands of Parliament, then for you to be able to oversight and then ask questions later and legislate and then oversight and say, look, money then was allocated, money was spent. Did we see? If we did not see, this is what we suggest ought to happen. Those processes do not take place. Right? You have budgeting for a country that is done void of priority. And you have people who have been put in place to get it done. But then people are only operating at the behest of the leader. In this case, because many say they've been captured, many flowery words have been used. Doesn't it appear criminal to you that you have an opportunity to do the job that you have been given to do, but you don't do it because you're trying to please one side? It seems like a circus to me.
It's not just politicians, by the way. Even in the executive, in the CSs and so forth. I mean, look, we had top brains who have joined government, but you wonder what happens when people join government. Then you find you have an opportunity to tell the leader that, no, this is not right. I don't think I need to borrow this money. I need to do this finance this way. Or we need to hold on this project. We need to do this. We need to do that. But unfortunately, this country, our leaders, whether it's in executive or in parliament, are driven by self-interests. The moment you have been given that opportunity, you're looking at, what do I get? You want the boss wants A, B, C, D? Yes, okay. Boss, I'll do. But you also want X, Y, Z. You're looking at your interest.
Yeah.
So then you want to always play ball. And this, unfortunately, has happened in parliament in the last 10 years. I'm telling you, the situation has got worse in parliament. Because the role of a member of parliament, when you are elected, is to represent the interest of your people. That's number one. It's representative. Representation is the key, more than anything else, even more than the oversight. Representation. You came from an area, somebody sent you to parliament. Our interest. So those guys lack water. You should look at the budget and say, so I need 10 million allocated to my constituency for water. If you're not allocated, I'm not approving this budget.
Right.
You are carrying out your role effectively. But we have seen in the last few years where people have actually gone in opposite direction. They say, no, forget about mine. I am approving this budget for the love of my president. You saw it in parliament, literally using those words.
Yeah.
Doing things because you want to please the boss. And that is what you are. And you wonder then, why did the person go to parliament in the first place? And this is the challenge we're having. It's the leadership. It's the leadership at all levels. But so I think, frankly speaking, this I have seen, this metamorphosis, you'll see it when somebody leaves even the private sector and joins government, and you say, now this is somebody different. This guy was running and something, technocrat has joined government and something will happen. But the next day he says, no, I'm waiting for advice from the president. The president has asked me to do ABCD. I will not do this because the president has not said so. We will only do so. I mean, it's and this is a collective responsibility. You are there as an advisor. Everybody who is an executive is an advisor to the government. You're supposed to tell the president, this is what we want to go forward in your cabinet. Have a dynamic situation, where you say, no, this boss doesn't work. I have a better idea. But unfortunately, self-interest seems to drive our nation more than anything else. And so when tomorrow you get into government,
things will change. Our government, even the constitution said, okay, let's bring in technocrats who join government so that they are able to offer proper advice to the president, the political leadership of the country on how best. This government, and even in the previous government of 2013 to 2017, if you look at just the resumes of the people who are in government, people who are heading, somebody was heading an Africa head of a commercial bank. Somebody else heading a local commercial bank, doing very well. They are in government. CEO of a lobby, a business lobby. They're in government. But like Mheshimiwa, you're saying, they all sit back and say, I'm waiting for the president to offer direction on what to go. I want to ask the next question, which is, this is not Uhuru Kenyatta's budget. I mean, he's not the one who's going to implement this budget.
Yeah.
The next administration is going to implement this budget. but it's being presented obviously by the current administration. Have you heard any conversation from the would-be new administrations saying what they'd like to see in the budget, saying, even critiquing the budget policy statement when it was taken to Parliament, the estimates which have not been very, very public this time and all? Have you heard, for example, from the Raila Odinga camp or the William Ruto camp on this is the kind of budget I'd like to inherit, and these are the kind of programs that I'd like to be financed in the first financial year of my administration?
What I have actually heard from each of them, both Raila and Ruto, is that come September 1st, when they have been elected, because each one, of course, says I'll be elected, September 1st, NHIF, you'll all have free NHIF cover and you'll never. Come 1st September, I remember Baba said on 1st September, Mumia sugar and those sugar things in Western, they are going to be, the money for that will be there in September. To Tanzania, by December, those things will be up and running. By September, 6,000 shillings will be given to every Kenyan. But let me tell you,
100 billion shillings for youth,
50
billion for SMEs.
So the thing is, the budget is going to be read. And the president supports one side. So I would expect that the president would at least, if he wants to help his brother, for example, Baba, to put the 6,000 shillings Baba has talked about in this budget, so that at least we can see
there's more money for social
so
protection.
that Kenyans who are not employed will start collecting their 6,000 after September if Baba comes in. Or that there will be money that Baba has talked about for reviving the sugar industries. Or I mean, you expect at least, you would say this side is at least, talking to government, so you'd expect something. But I can tell you for sure, the budget policy statement has been out, and the strategy papers and all those things which guide the estimates. So I don't expect really any miracle to come out of those estimates. I mean, clearly already how government plans to spend has already been laid out. So when you stand out there and tell Kenyans from September, this is what happened, it's not already in the budget.
You talked about crisis in leadership.
Yeah.
And this is pointing us to we are going to inherit the same kind of leadership. If Raila and Ruto have not talked about the budget policy statement, the budget estimates, the policy of the finance of the budget that they're going to inherit, what does that tell us? Does that tell us that, don't they have any way of even making a comment? Release a statement and say, you know what, the National Treasury's policy statement looks to be going this way, but no, we would like, and we're actually going to rally our members to shoot down any direction that does not go in our direction. We're not hearing any of these conversations.
Now, Eric, you are expecting too much from our leaders. Our leaders are the same. We have not got some new leadership. These guys have been in government, in and out, for the last 20, 30 years. You don't expect any change. And they know, even as they speak in those public rallies, that whatever they're speaking is not here. But they expect you and I, Gali Boland, will not remember those things.
Right.
Of course. They expect that we will not be looking at those things they're saying out there literally. And you'll simply walk away. And so, they don't need to look at the documents. They don't need to look at the budget because everything is there. All the things that are going to be done is already in the budget policy documents which have been published. How much money is going to be given. For example, it says
to healthcare.
The government will give 1.5 billion to drought-stricken counties, 23 counties with tens of millions of people. You want to give 1.5 billion.
Only 1.5
They have
billion.
lost already animals worth 30 billion in the last 3 months. I mean, it's a joke. But when you speak, so they have not looked at, and they don't need to because they know you and I will not really take their words literally, and you will not remember what they said after you leave the venue.
Right. So, I mean, shroud it however you want to. I mean, these are lies that are being told to Kenyans. Because if you're going to say you're going to do 1, 2, 3, and we already have a budget, I mean, more or less, that is out, right? Those things having not been catered for in said budget already, then wouldn't it be wise to say that if you have somebody who is telling you things against the facts, you can see the two don't meet. then you have no business listening to them.
I'm telling you, you see, if I was Baba today and I had a friend like the president, I can get some things done that can give me mileage in my campaigns. I can tell my friend, Sikiza, budget, there are things I have talked about.
Yeah.
There are things which I want to do.
Make sure they are there.
Can you put one or two of them? I can stand out there and say, folks, yes, this is what I'm going to do. It is there. You don't see it in the budget. This is what I'm going to do if you elect me. But you see, the way politics, because politics, there's always uncertainty. You don't know who's going to come in. The other party can also say, I'm the one who's going to do that. So I think, unfortunately, we have our politics, to a large extent, has not been issue-based. It's the first time that in the politics of this country, campaigns, people seem to be talking about the economy, bottom up, top up, technical terms, but no one has given anything substantive, really, in terms of economic policy that you can look at and say, yes, this party, if they get to power, this is their blueprint for the economy, and this is how they're going to change. When we take power, we are going to do this. It's easy. I've seen others who have said, when we come in, tax to Tatoa. Amwezi kulipa hii tax ya aina hii. You not pay this, you not pay that. But those are gimmicks. But in terms of really something substantive that you can put down, because for example, I'll give you a simple example: the 8% tax on petrol, VAT, the VAT.
Yeah.
It came in when IMF insisted, when the government wanted that, $1 billion from IMF, and they said, okay, we'll give you a condition, please put VAT.
Bring VAT so you can raise some money.
You can raise the money. I mean, if you say, I'm going to remove that, then, somewhere in Washington, you'll be told, sorry, my friend. That's a condition. It's not happening. This is why, as we speak now, and I keep saying, the liter of petrol, which is 134 in Nairobi, about 73 shillings is government taxes and levies. 73 shillings out of that 100. So instead of government struggling to look for money to give to petrol stations as a subsidy, subsidize the price, they can say, okay, no, there's no point. Why do I collect from you and then bring it back as a subsidy? Don't pay VAT. Don't pay excise duty, 24 shillings, 25 shillings per litre, which you're paying. Don't pay petroleum development. Don't pay railway. You're paying railway development. So there are many ways, but they can't, because some of those things have been put in by institutions that gave you that 10 trillion which you have borrowed.
So there's external factor as
there's
well in this budget.
Yes,
and we cannot.
You misbehaved, and there's a price. You borrowed, and so there's a price you have to pay. Oh yes, there's no free lunch.
Indeed. There's no interrogation, unfortunately. If we're looking at it from the citizens' end, there's no interrogation of these things. It comes like, there's this wind, this euphoria, and then everybody's just kind of like, up and enjoying it. But there's no questioning and saying, these things that you promise, this budget that you're making, clearly you don't have the money for it. How are you going to run the country? We have people who are hungry. We have people who are suffering from the effects of drought. We have a healthcare system that's on its knees. What are we looking at in terms of cancer patients for today in Kenya right now? And I keep coming back to that. There's no interrogation of the same, and there is no expectation of interrogation either. I mean, those who are sitting in these positions, they know that Kenyans will not ask. They know Kenyans will not interrogate. How would you suggest, that even this interrogation takes place, even if it were to start asking questions?
You elected representatives to interrogate for you. There are people you elected and send them to parliament, ideally. Ideally, that's what happens in every other country in the world. Your elected representatives are the ones who should do that work for you. They look at every piece of legislation. They look at the budget. They look at every development project, every proposal. If it is a laptop, it goes to the story of laptop for kids. It goes to parliament for approval. So everything is done, supposed to have been done by your elected. Where these people either lack the capacity or have been influenced one way or the other, not to look at those things critically, then that's where the failure is. And let me say also this: I think Kenyans also, as people, sometimes take the blame, because nobody wants somebody serious. I mean, I remember the election in 2017. For example, the governor in Nairobi, there were serious people like Jim Nambaru and others who were running. How many votes did they get? Or you get Mother Karua running for president. How many times? How many votes did she get?
Right.
Nobody wants you. Also, if you are, what people want, it's sometimes
populist.
That populist, name. Today, if a very sharp Kenyan who's got the capacity and everything comes up to stand for president, I can assure you, if he's not known in terms of the politics, they'll say, "Oh, sorry, my friend." So that is the challenge. I mean, we don't elect people on the basis of their integrity. We don't elect on the basis of their knowledge, of the economic, and whatever. We look at, other factors, and this is where the challenge. And so the political class has seen this, and so our MPs have also seen it. That's why our MPs don't have to go and represent you. They go and represent their interests.
Because they know
at the end of the day, when I go back to the constituency, what do you want? I will give out some little money.
I'll come to your funeral.
And you don't have any issue. At the end of the day, so to a large extent, to some extent, I would say the people also play a role. And in countries where democracies work and people are well informed of their rights, you cannot get away with some things. You'll be held to account.
That's true.
You cannot vote for a VAT 8% on my fuel and tomorrow come to me for a vote. I'll tell you, sorry, my friend. Did you consult me? Why did you do that?
Accountability starts with the people.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa, thank you very much for joining us today. Bill Okoh is a former senator of Mandera County. He's been with us throughout this hour. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be talking about what we expect to see in the financial, in the budget that's going to be presented by CS for the National Treasury, Ukur Yatani, in Parliament today. Come again soon, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you very much.
And keep it here for more conversations in the next hour. Good morning. It's 9 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is Newswire Dennis Aseto. The 2022-2023 budget to be pronounced by the National Treasury is projected to top 3.3 trillion shillings against backdrop of rising cost of living as prices of basic commodities skyrocket. With the prevailing circumstances, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani is expected to increase subsidy programs and stimulus packages to check inflation. Early this week, the government released 34.4 billion shillings as fuel subsidy fund to ease the fuel shortage that was occasioned by a standoff between marketers and the government. And Amani National Congress Party leader Musalia Mudavadi has urged the government to make the subsidized fertilizer available to all Kenyans without restrictions. Mudavadi said that small-scale farmers should not be left out despite not being registered under the National Cereals and Produce Board. The ANC leader spoke after meeting Western Kenya grassroots leaders and aspirants living in Nairobi. The leaders from the three constituencies of Kibra, Dagoretti South and Lang'ata were drawn from ANC, UDA and Ford Kenya parties. Now, fresh details have emerged regarding the mysterious death of a Gatanga CCM secondary school student in March 2019. According to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, investigations are in advanced stages and it has been established that the girl was assaulted severely by a senior administrative member during evening preps on allegations that her hair had been styled contrary to the school regulations. The Form 1 student died amid contradicting accounts from the school administration, who had earlier said that she died in sleep after complaining of chest pains during the day. Additionally, the school's deputy principal had claimed that the deceased was rushed to the hospital after she fell sick but died while receiving treatment, but the facility refuted the account, saying that they received a dead body. The girl is said to have been found unresponsive in the morning by her colleagues when they tried to wake her up. An autopsy later revealed that she bled to death after she was hit with an object on her head, breaking her skull, leading into her bleeding internally. The DCI, in a report, said that it had taken over investigations into the case in January this year and had interviewed students of the now St. Anurite Gatanga Girls' School. Now, 7 people appeared before a Nyeri court for subjecting minors to the illegal female genital mutilation at Nginga village in Nyeri. The accused 5 women and 2 men were nabbed by Mukuruine police officers during a crackdown on April 4th in the county. According to a National Police Service report, the operation led to the apprehension of the 7. 7 minors were rescued during the operation. Now, shock and grief engulfed the Kapsoit Trading Center in Aina Moisab County after a 24-year-old woman stabbed her 24-year-old lover over a relationship dispute. Residents in the area who witnessed the incident claimed that the couple had been having problems for the past week. They claimed that the woman had been having problems with her boyfriend after he hired some ladies to manage his lotto gambling machines, which he had been operating at the center. And Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Tshisekedi is set to tour Kenya for a 2-day state visit beginning today. A statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that President Tshisekedi will be hosted by his Kenyan counterpart President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House Nairobi. The visit comes days after the Central African nation was included in the East African Community and will see the 2 heads of state sign the bidding treaties. And a military court in Burkina Faso has handed down a life term to former President Blaise Compaoré, who, over the 1987 assassination of revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara. Applause erupted in the courtroom as the long-awaited verdict was read out, bringing the curtain down on a case that has afflicted the impoverished and volatile state for 34 years. The court also issued life terms to Hyacinthe Kafando, an officer suspected of having led the hit squad, and Gilbert Diendere, an army commander in the time of the assassination, which coincided with a coup that brought Compaoré to power. And head coach Paul Lodera named the 32-man Simba squad for the Currie Cup between April and June in South Africa. Dan Sekuta will captain the squad alongside Impala's Elkins Musonye and KCB's Darwin Mukidza. Kenya's Sevens legend Collins Injera will replace Jacob Boje on May 1st due to work commitments. Menengai Oilers' Brian Dirangu will replace KCB's Oliver Mangeni on April 21st. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Assetto. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
We're not dealing with too much of a traffic situation this morning. Coming off Thika Superhighway looks really good. I don't think we're seeing much of anything left now. Coming off Kiambu Road, still just a little bit as you get to Muthaiga Square, and then out towards the city, you're all right. On Limuru Road, just past City Park, so we see some back-to-back traffic, and we're looking at in and outbound, but not too bad. Again, Uhuru Highway will have spots here and there as you're getting out to the city. That industrial area circuit also continues with Jogo Road and Lunga Lunga. Likoni then doing that dance this morning. Raila Odinga Way is taking everything off Langata Road, and so we're looking at bumper to bumper all the way to Ngong Road at that City Mortuary Junction roundabout. And then coming off Mombasa Road also looks pretty good as well. Imara Daima, we're going to see that stretch still continues. Toll stations being completed, and so that stops traffic a little bit with the narrowing of the roads. Let's take a look in about half an hour and see how this all changes. Talk to us in the meantime on SpiceFM, KE on Twitter, text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the
7
only
minutes
way
after
to
9,
start your
7th
day.
day of March/April 2022, Kenya's biggest conversation. It continues. We are saying it's March because April can't have come and the power bills are still high. The promise by the president is that power bills are going to come down by a further 15% by the end of March. So until that happens,
We're still in
March.
Okay.
We cannot move into the second quarter with pending promises. Tumekataa hiyo. Anyway, we are going to have a conversation now about election preparedness, #Justice Thursdays. And before we introduce the guest who joins us from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, let's remind you today's proverb. And the proverb is from Malawi. Blow your horn in a herd of elephants. Crow in the company of cockerels. Bleat in a flock of goats. If you are in a flock of goats, bleat. In the company of cockerels, crow. If you are in a herd of elephants, blow your horn. Trumpet. Do the appropriate thing with the appropriate audience. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. If you're with children, get onto the jumping castle.
Indeed.
That's the whole point. Yeah, get onto the jumping castle.
I like that.
Yes. Alois Kemo is a Senior Assistant Director and also the Regional Prosecutions Coordinator for Rift Valley from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. He's with us now in the studio. Good morning, Alois.
Good morning.
It's good to have you on the show. Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Thanks for having me.
Don't mind the term hot seat. It'll not be hot. It'll just be very, very, very comfortable for you to sit there and enjoy the experience with us.
Thank you.
So, Regional Prosecutions Coordinator, Rift Valley. What does that mean? That's a long title.
I think I'm in charge of prosecutions in the Rift Valley, the entire Rift Valley, the way you knew it under the previous constitution.
Where? Starting all the way from
Lodwar through to Narok, Kilgoris, but Kajiado is under Nairobi. I think that's the only difference.
Kajiado is under Nairobi.
Kajiado is under the regional coordinator for Nairobi.
And Kajiado here, we are talking about going all the way in Kajiado County.
Kajiado County.
Okay.
So from Rongai all the way to Lotoktok.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you deal with now the rest.
The rest.
And these are Narok, Nakuru,
Samburu, Turkana,
Laikipia,
Uasin Gishu, Laikipia, yeah.
Laikipia is also Rift Valley.
Yes.
People forget that. It's on that side. How can it be in the Rift Valley?
Yeah.
Okay, so as a coordinator, as the one who coordinates prosecutions, what does that mean? That means that you're the one who will act as the DPP in Rift Valley.
It means that I represent the DPP in Rift Valley. I supervise all the county heads in that region, and for that matter, all the prosecutors who are in that region. Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about election preparedness.
Yes.
And when you hear the DPP is preparing for elections, you ask yourself, why is the DPP preparing for elections? We know the judiciary is preparing for elections. We've spoken to the chair of the Judiciary Committee on Election Preparedness, Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, and he's told us it's because, obviously, you're going to have very many petitions that are going to come to court. And we have also heard from the security. They have to prepare because they are providing security during elections. Why is the DPP preparing for elections?
So you are all aware that during elections, Kenya has had a lot of problems. Violence escalates during elections. There are a wide range of offenses that are committed during the election cycle, even though they could just be ordinary offenses. But you find that there could be an upsurge. Political violence, sexual and gender-based cases, they rise. There's fraud even in the electoral process. And all these things necessitate that all the agencies that are involved in the enforcement of the law take action so that we assure Kenyans, as the Constitution stipulates, that there's going to be a fair and just election. It's all about people choosing the leaders they want, determining, because that has a bearing on the life they're going to lead. And so it is important that an environment is provided where they can choose the leaders they want in a fair, devoid of any violence, devoid of undue influence, or any such offenses that could be committed.
Historically, what have been some of the cases that you have seen as pertains to elections that you would then keep on your radar and say, okay, these are some of the things that we're likely to see or that we would watch out for?
So I think the most worrying thing we've noted in all the previous elections is sometimes the violence, because that really threatens the national security. And I think the strategy the government uses is that you have to nip that in the bud. If there is any whiff of violence, or you see some tendency taking you towards that direction, the strategy is just to take action against the people responsible so that they serve as a lesson and deter other people who would be thinking similarly.
Okay. And would you say that some of the cases that then were brought to you, I mean, because after investigations have been done, you say, well, we have adequate evidence or information to say, look, this now needs to go for prosecution. Those which have come to your table, would you say that you have seen then justice served, or that you've been able to take cases from end to end, or have they unfortunately sometimes ended up in smoke?
Of course, the environment or the circumstances in which some of these offenses are created poses a challenge. We have offenses that are committed in public rallies. Ideally, we're supposed to have monitors monitoring some of those rallies. We expect that perhaps the persons who are monitoring, who are investigators actually, they could be from NCIC, they could be police themselves, that they would be able to record the events, and in the event of, say for example, hate speech being committed, that such utterances could be captured, and that therefore the evidence could be availed to the prosecution to use against such people. We also have your colleagues in the media who sometimes record, but sometimes the challenge is, particularly from the media, it is very difficult for a person recording on the ground to come forward and offer to testify. So there are those challenges, and the government cannot be everywhere at the same time. Even though it is said serikali na mkono mrefu, but the reality is the police cannot be everywhere at any given time. So analyzing the cases that we've had previously, we noticed there were some gaps, and that necessitated that there be a paradigm shift, so that the approach to investigations and prosecution of these cases be different. So learning from the cases that we've had before, we decided to come up with this compendium, which is basically just instructions to prosecutors on how to handle some of these cases when they come before them. So we are drawing from all the policies that we have in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and giving instructions, basically, if it is pre-trial, say in the investigation stage, what is it that a prosecutor can do? The ODPP Act permits prosecutor-guided investigations. So you can guide an investigator on the kind of evidence, the lines of inquiry they need to follow. You can tell them on the admissibility of evidence. You can talk about the relevance of that evidence. You can advise them on the credibility, in other words, the believability of that evidence. And a varied range of parameters that would become important once you start prosecuting a case.
Would this mean that you lower thresholds? So you've got the decision to charge protocols, which say this is how we're going to determine if we're going to accept to go to court with a particular case. Now, you're saying that you're looking at all these things and reviewing. Would it mean lowering some of the thresholds?
We are not lowering the thresholds. I think in the field of law, in the criminal law practice, the prosecutor has a very high burden because the standard is you must prove beyond any reasonable doubt. Any iota of doubt in your case is always resolved in favor of the accused person. So that is a very huge burden. But as prosecutors, and under the decision to charge guidelines, I think we look at the evidence because the decision to charge guidelines sets the standard, and it should be that a prosecutor looks at the evidence, determines whether it is sufficient, what we refer to as this two-stage test in the first instance. Look at the sufficiency of evidence and look at all those parameters that I've discussed, the admissibility of evidence, the relevance. Is that evidence going to be available? If it is electronic evidence, is that issues of chains of custody? Then, after you are satisfied that there is sufficient evidence, you then go into the second test, which is the public interest test. And what the public interest test really is, it's not public pressure as most people would perceive it. It is what is in the wider interest of justice or the wider interest of the community. So after you have satisfied yourself there is sufficient evidence, you could, for example, look at what harm is this going to cause the community. Is this a person that it would be in the ends of justice to prosecute? For example, you are faced maybe with an accused who is 98 years old, and you want to take that person through the rigors of trial. I mean, that is what public interest really entails. What is in the wider interest of justice?
You know, I'm asking this because we have had by-elections in the last 4 years, and we've had incidences of violence in by-elections. We're talking about just elections in this particular case. Kabichai Matungu by-election, widely publicized, everybody saw what was happening. There was violence, right? And yet, in the instances where people have been taken to court, someone goes to court and say, no, I was not slapping the guy, I was just saying hi. And cases don't move. We have not seen proper prosecution as a result of what happened in Kabichai. An electoral official was sexually assaulted. Well, in our opinion, not, you may tell us maybe it's not the case. We saw somebody being roughed up in the glare of cameras, and yet no prosecution is actually going. How can we trust that you are going to be able to prosecute if we have widespread cases on August 9th?
Okay, I may not have interacted with the file in respect of that Kabuchai incident, but I can speak widely from my experience as a prosecutor, that, you know, a file could be presented to you for review, and you apply all the policies in determining whether there is a case or not, whether there is sufficient evidence. You run those tests that I've talked about, and you make the decision to charge. But the story, when you go to court, changes because witnesses grow cold feet. We are aware of instances where witnesses have been threatened. They disappear. Some are influenced not to come and testify. So there are a variety of reasons why sometimes cases fail to take off. And this compendium, one of the things it speaks to is to guide prosecutors that at a very early stage, try and determine whether there are any vulnerable witnesses and whether there are steps that you can take to protect them, and in that case, so that you can protect the evidence when the case comes up for trial. And we then liaise with the Witness Protection Agency, have those witnesses placed under protection, because the Witness Protection Agency they have their own ways of assessing the level of threats and what protective measures they can put in place to protect.
But Alois, let me just pause you. You know, you're currently heading the team from the ODPP that is looking at how best to handle incidences that may require the ODPP to act. What lessons are you drawing from those by-elections? From the by-elections that we have, for example, those Kabuchai ones, where clearly we have not seen justice.
And this is the reason why I'm saying. I said I may not talk about the Kabuchai case because I've not interacted with that file. But generally, we have observed that witnesses sometimes, when you take a case to court, witnesses grow cold feet. You summon witnesses, they fail to attend. Sometimes you don't know. You could be told that they relocated from their places of residence.
Or they've been threatened.
Or they've been threatened. Or they've been paid not to come to court. There are wide variety of reasons. So the lesson we learned is that it is necessary to identify a witness who could be vulnerable. And that can be determined from the kind of testimony they are giving. Perhaps they are giving testimony against a very impressionable person in the society. And you could then determine that this is a person perhaps we need to put in protection to secure their evidence or to get them away from people who could try and influence them.
I see a second challenge, though.
Yeah.
And the second challenge here is that when you talk about a witness going into witness protection, you're talking about disrupting their daily life. What would you use to convince this person that, okay, yeah, you witnessed this and you saw it happen, and we'd like you now to become our witness. So we're going to put you into witness protection. We have to then move you from here probably. And, I don't know what it would entail. But you're basically telling them, sacrifice your life so that so-and-so can get justice.
So what the Witness Protection Agency does is they do their own assessment. And they carry out interviews with the people responsible. And I think they determine what are the best measures that they can put in place. Sometimes somebody can be relocated, taken to a location that maybe nobody knows. It could sometimes result in change of identity. There are a wide range of measures that they can take. If the level of threat is low, we could even just have this person brought to court under camouflage. Maybe he wears a kanzu, goggles, and a hat just to conceal their identity. But it all depends on the level of threat that a witness faces. And we have seen.
With the number of cases that have then been brought to you, what would you say that on the majority, if you're able to do a split, what would you say that then you're able to see some of these cases through, or some of them have ended up whereby, somebody who would have then been protected by the law, unfortunately, we have these cases whereby somebody has been paid, somebody has been scared, somebody has been intimidated, whatever the case may be. Which ones would you say tip the scale? Those which have been closed, unfortunately, or those then that you've seen justice see?
I think without necessarily giving the statistics, but my observation is that they are half-half. There are cases we have successfully prosecuted. There are cases where we have challenges. I've just spoken about, with the proliferation of technology, the platforms on which offenses could be committed are now so varied. You could have a statement maybe going viral, or somebody making some utterances that are offensive going viral.
Yes.
There is a very big challenge. It could be on a social media platform, Facebook, for example. It could be on Twitter, on those platforms. And that kind of evidence, you all know that the challenges we face sometimes is not being able to prove whether that clip is original or it has been edited.
Doctored, yes.
So that challenge is there, and courts have really insisted that we need to authenticate, demonstrate that is the clip that was taken.
And even beyond that, we've also heard a lot of explanation has been given. Eric alluded to one of those examples, that something could have happened, and then somebody says, well, that it wasn't my intent. My intent was not to cause any harm. When I was saying this, I wasn't really, I was just, in the throes of the moment, perhaps saying so. intent has been one of the most difficult things to prove or disprove, and in terms of prosecutions the world over. How do you deal with some of those things? Because we've seen a lot of times they say it was not my intent and then it kind of ends up in smoke. How do you deal with that?
So one other thing we have done is we have looked at the international best practice. You are aware that under Article 2 of the Constitution, those international conventions form part of the law of the land.
Yes.
And then treaties that we have also ratified also form part of our law. And going by that principle, we have the Rabat threshold test. It arose from Rabat Plan of Action, and what they were trying to deal with, the world community generally. It was under the auspices of the United Nations. The threat of hate speech and the harm it causes. And so they came up with a 6-part test that one would use to determine whether you could take action against perpetrators of hate speech. And the guidance they give is that, first of all, if you're talking about those utterances, what was the social or political context in which they were made? Then you look at the status of the person who is making those utterances. Is it just a simple person? Is it an influential person who could influence other people? They talk about the intention, what you're speaking about, of the speaker, the content of the speech itself, what was uttered. Because if you're going to charge somebody, for example, you're supposed to put the exact utterances in the language in which they were made, and maybe a transcription and a translation also made for the benefit of whoever is going to prosecute or be arbitrating the case. And then you look at the extent of dissemination. How far has it been disseminated? You look, for example, what is the platform that is being used to disseminate that kind of utterance, and the likelihood of harm that is likely to be caused. So these guidelines, or this test, this threshold, Rabat threshold test, is not meant to replace or substitute the decision to charge, but it complements the decision to charge. And I think this is a new innovation. I think for the first time, we are going to apply these principles in determining.
How many steps were they? Were they 6?
Six parts, yeah.
All those 6, Alois, as I heard you talking about them, I thought about Eldoret, February 2022. Was it February or was it January?
Yeah.
Mithika Linturi speaking in Eldoret. Public, widely publicized. Mithika Linturi is a senator. The context of using the word madoa-doa, all those things. And I'm just ticking as you go. I mean, I'm just... And then I remember that the ODPP went to court and said, you know what, we can't sustain this case. Let's withdraw the case. You are the man in charge of Rift Valley region. Eldoret is in Rift Valley now.
So this case is still actively under inquiry.
Okay.
And I wouldn't want to comment, but I think we were guided by the decision to charge guidelines in arriving at that decision. Yes, the context in which the utterances were made is there, but there was still a challenge somewhere with that kind of evidence. And I think let me just leave it, because it is a case that is actively under investigation, so that I don't jeopardize the efforts that are being made
by the investigators.
By the investigators, yes.
Okay, let's take a break. 28 minutes to 10, Kenya's biggest conversation. Alois Kemo is a Senior Assistant Director of Prosecutions, also the Regional Prosecutions Coordinator for Rift Valley in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. We are talking about what the ODPP is doing to prepare for any likely upsurge of cases that they may need to take to court in this electioneering period. Hate speech, violence, also violence. Last weekend, helicopter stoned. That is violence. So all those things, what are they doing to prepare themselves to adequately deal with these cases and take them to court and to get justice? Let's take a quick break. We'll be back. And also remind you, walk into Naivas today, buy Colgate. Any tub of Colgate that you buy, some of that money will go towards helping drill 30 new wells in 7 counties. Because Colgate is doing what?
Well, making sure that water as a resource comes closer to those who need it and have had this lack for a very long time. And then also making sure that once you buy that, it contributes directly towards sinking these 30 new boreholes that they would like, or water wells that they would like to have in certain communities around the country.
Indeed. Keep it right here for more on that. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
The only way to live your best life is to create a balance between work, love, and play.
Smoking shisha and releasing things on your smoke like a Subaru.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you want God to give you a man who has a mission and a vision.
You may create an illusion of because he's younger, he's interested in me or he likes me, but he's using me.
Text the word adult to 22840 to get the latest clips from adults in the room directly to your mobile phone. SMS adults to 22840.
The adults in the room. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz.
Cloudy conditions in Nairobi at
neo-soul.
20, highs of 27 and lows of 16. At 21, Nakuru is sunny, highs of 29 and lows of 14. 26 with high in Nyeri, where it's sunny at 17, down to lows of 14. And 21 and sunny in Eldoret, highs of 26 and lows of 15. The sun is out in Mombasa at 30, highs of 33 and lows of 26 today. It's also a sunny day in Malindi. We'll see highs of 33 and lows of 28. Kisumu, 26, going to highs of 29 and lows of 20, while Kakamega is sunny at 27. We'll see highs of 31. Mostly sunny conditions in Kampala at 28. At 24, we'll see highs of 29, and currently at 29, Dar es Salaam. The rain is coming down, seeing highs of 32 and lows of 26. It's 15 and sunny in Johannesburg. 21 will be the high and lows of 10, while Lagos is hazy at 25. It'll go to highs of 33. Kinshasa is cloudy at 26, highs of 33 and lows of 24. Out in Beijing, it's now 20 and sunny going into early evening Thursday. We'll see highs of 23 and lows of 7. It's raining in Paris at 12. That continues, going to highs of 15 and lows of 8 today, while it's partly sunny in London at 8. We'll see highs of 12. And New York coming into Thursday. It's currently 9 degrees. We'll see highs of 10, back down to lows of 9. All right, coming out of traffic hour this morning, hasn't been too crazy today. Traffic is getting easier and easier by the day. It still remains a little bit heavy here and there on Jogo Road, and then heading out towards the city by way of Raila Odinga Way. That was a bit sketchy earlier, but now it's thinning out as you get towards the roundabout at the city mortuary. Thika Superhighway free and clear, no problems there at all. Kiambu Road also thinning out some. The Pangani underpass will be heavy for some time as you're getting out towards Muranga Road and then into the city. The Eastern Bypass, which started early, still taking on some traffic, but nothing crazy, so it's a good thing. Through the morning, talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter, text 40127.
Business news on Spice FM. I'm Dennis Aseto. The hospitality sector has been challenged to adopt innovative tech-based solutions to grow and survive the adverse impact of COVID-19. Speaking during a stakeholder engagement session hosted by Pesapal, a payment solution provider with operations in Kenya and across East Africa, the hospitality industry was challenged to embrace technology as part of their growth plan and shake off the severe consequences of the pandemic. Pesapal Executive Director Gostad Liko acknowledged the growth Pesapal has undergone in the travel and hospitality industry since its inauguration 10 years ago. Now, fishermen within beaches of Lake Victoria in Bunyala sub-county are hard hit by the ravaging shortage of fuel, which has affected the entire country. According to the Secretary of Marenga Omena Beach Management Unit, Omondi Ndeke, the crisis has affected the fishing expeditions, which are driven by ox-bow engines that are propelled by petrol. Ndeke lamented that the crisis has negatively affected the BMU revenue collection along the beach due to the reduction of boats being used and the number of days for fishing expeditions. KCB Foundation is calling for applications for the High School Scholars Program for the class of 2022. This year, the foundation has scaled the program by putting in 252 million shillings to support 1,000 bright underprivileged learners from across the country, up from 240 students. The increase in the number of beneficiaries is in line with KCB Foundation's expansions of the entire Scholars Program, which now includes an apprenticeship element as well as university and tertiary education scholarships. German Finance Minister Christian Lindner has voiced concern over his country's heavy reliance on trade with China, saying Europe's top economy needed to diversify its export destinations. Germany's centre-left-led government came to power in December, vowing dialogue and toughness in its dealings with China, with a focus on human rights after the commerce-driven pragmatism of previous administrations. China was again Germany's largest trading partner in 2021, with the countries exchanging goods worth 245 billion euros. For Spice Business, I'm Dennis Sassetto.
Business news, keeping you up to date on all your money matters.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It is 20 minutes to 10. Kenya's biggest innovation. This is Eric Latiff, Okoh, and our guest this hour, Alois Kemo. He's the Regional Prosecutions Coordinator for Rift Valley in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. We're talking about election preparedness and what the ODPP is doing to prepare itself in the event of an upsurge of cases that they may need to take to court. And we're already seeing that, Alois. This year alone, so we've had that incident in Eldoret with the mythical injury. You're saying investigation still ongoing. We have the weekend incident on Saturday with the Raila Odinga's helicopter. Investigations are ongoing. But as they are going on, the conversation is already being primed in public domain, just the same way with the mythical injury conversation. It was primed in the public domain. This word, madoa-doa, is a daft word, is a bad word, context of where it's been used and all. This one for Raila Odinga. Yesterday, the CS for Interior and Coordination of National Government appeared before parliamentarians and he said this thing had been organized. Somebody had even had money and they were paying people to have, and that's the evidence that we have. Everybody then expects that the day Kemo goes to court to charge whoever Kemo will be charging, Kemo will be showing us who had the money and who paid these people to stone Raila's helicopter. You're already being placed in an awkward position here, aren't you?
Until the file is submitted and we see what evidence is in the file, I'm not in an awkward position. I'm a trained lawyer. I'm a prosecutor of many years' experience. I know what to do with a file when it is placed before me. And it's not going to be different. We are going to analyze the evidence that will be submitted. Whatever the minister said, he said, perhaps as a person who is in charge of the security of the country, maybe he's privy to information that we still are yet to have. I last spoke to my counterpart, the regional police commander, about this issue and told them that it was necessary that they forward the file to us well in advance so that we can review it and make a decision. And at the time we spoke, we agreed also that an application, because they requested for more time to pursue some of the leads they needed to pursue after they interrogated some of the politicians whom they summoned last weekend. I think it is just fair that the investigators carry out their investigations. I'm hopeful that those lines they gave were credible and that something will come out of it. That because that action definitely is abhorrent. It is something that we cannot entertain against anybody, not only the former Prime Minister.
In as much as we know, I mean, that there are definitely cases which you prosecute which are away from the public eye, there are many, or there are quite significant ones that have been right there in public. And it would appear as though public outcry then is what feeds into action from your office. There are some cases whereby everybody's made so much noise about it and then we've seen action thereafter. Does the level or magnitude pressure of public outcry then have an effect on what you would choose to then go after in terms of case, especially one as sensitive that has anything to do with the election?
So one of the things that this compendium speaks about is it discusses prosecutorial independence. And I remember yesterday I was speaking to the prosecutors who are in the training that is currently ongoing since Monday, just sensitizing them on this compendium. And we were discussing, and I told them about prosecutorial independence. Don't be swayed by any other thing other than the evidence that has been brought before you, the law, and nothing else. That is what should guide you when a file is placed before you. And to the best of my memory, I think that is what guides us. If the Linturi case was anything to go by, there was a lot of pressure. But we still stood to say that we need to have the evidence that would warrant us taking this case to court. Because there has to be a reasonable prospect that a court, properly directing itself to the law and the evidence, would convict a person. If we are not satisfied, then that case is not ready. And I think in other jurisdictions, people take time to investigate. I wish we could do that here also.
Apply ourselves to investigation.
Yes.
Because
time. That, yeah.
You know, Aloysius, as you're saying all this, in other cases where you have to, where you have to deal with criminal prosecutions, you mostly will deal with the law. But when it comes to campaigns and elections, you're not just dealing with the law, you're also dealing with politics. And there's public perception. And then there's also pressure. Now, how does that come to bear on your work when you're dealing with this? Because, yes, you will tell me, I did not get sufficient evidence to take this matter to court, or the evidence that was adduced before personality A was not sufficient for me to actually go and prosecute this person, but I had sufficient evidence against so-and-so who was caught with a stone. And they're the ones who threw the stone. But the person who had paid them to go and throw the stone, whereas it could be public knowledge who that person was, but you don't have sufficient evidence. But then you see the problem that brings to your office is the perception that you are only going after the small fish, the chicken thief, while you know very well the person who organized this is so-and-so and you're going for them.
Eric, I repeat again, that when a file is brought to me, I analyze the evidence, and I analyze the evidence against each individual suspected to have committed the offense. And I must satisfy myself that there's sufficient evidence and determine what charges to bring against that individual. That is what guides me, that is what guides my colleagues in making that decision, whether or not to charge. Nothing else comes to bear, no amount of pressure. Yeah, because we are only guided by the law, we are guided by the Constitution, and we are guided by the policies.
But it also sounds like you're also guided by the investigator. Because if you don't have sufficient evidence, so if the investigator has not brought you sufficient evidence, despite you as a lawyer knowing very well that this Ndu is guilty or Ndu is a perpetrator, Ndu needs to be before court. If Eric, the investigator, has not brought you sufficient evidence to prosecute Ndu, you're like,
there's nothing I can do.
I mean, I've got Rabat, I've got...
Those are the standards. I mean, prosecutors are ministers of justice. As in, there are people who are supposed to preach justice. A prosecutor is not supposed to seek conviction by all means. So I'm not going to take someone to court when I don't have evidence. It is not the right thing to do. Yeah? It is not the right thing to do. You must have. And remember, a person is presumed innocent until he's proven guilty. Remember also that if we adopted, say what you're saying, because I'm not imagining you're telling me to take somebody to court without evidence.
No.
Because, Eric, you might walk out of this building and somebody just arrests you, yeah, and takes you to court. Is that what Kenyans would like?
No.
No. Everybody wants to be assured that if there is a case against them, there will be evidence that will have been tested by the agencies that are involved before they are taken to court. And they're given their day in court so that the evidence is adduced against them. They're given all their constitutional guarantees to defend themselves. I think that is the only way that someone can achieve
But don't
justice.
you have another obligation to the victim? Let's think, if there was another round of post-election violence and people have been killed, okay? Don't you, as an office, have an obligation to the victims of that violence? So say that you shall do everything humanly possible to dig deep, working with the investigative agencies to find out the culprits, to have sufficient evidence that can then be taken to court to prosecute the perpetrators and have justice.
You know, on Monday, when the DPP made his remarks at the opening of that training, in the presence of the Chief Justice, and all these principals of these agencies, law enforcement agencies, were in attendance, he gave a commitment that they will ensure that where there are offenses committed during this election cycle, he's going to take action. But that action will depend, obviously, on the evidence. Eric, I want to say that we all have a responsibility. To the young people, I would advise, don't be swayed, by the utterances that are made. Don't commit those offenses. And I think going forward, we're going to have engagements. This is one such engagement that we can have. I hope the people listening are enlightened, but we are going to have more of such engagements so that we sensitize the public also on the law and what could follow if they violate the law during these elections.
Sure. And how would you say that you are prepared for going into the elections? Because, I mean, if anything that we've seen in the last few months is something to go by, and, you know, what is out there in matters of public opinion, that if we've already started on this path, that things are likely to get sticky as we draw nearer and nearer to the election. So how would you say that you're prepared to now be able to deal with any of these things that then might creep up?
So what the DPP has done is to appoint focal point prosecutors throughout the country. And we are having at least 2 or 3 prosecutors within every county that are then going to handle these cases. We expect that he has also created the hate speech and electoral justice division within the office, headed by a senior assistant director of public prosecutions. And it will act as the secretariat. Whenever a case is filed, even if it is filed in Lamu or Kehancha or wherever, it is our expectation that they will relay that data and what has happened in that particular case on a daily basis, so that we are able to track those cases. And the regional heads will, as I've stated, be the representatives of the DPP to make sure that everything is done properly. The other thing, as we near the elections, we are going to do is that we are going to create some sort of 24-hour call center where we can also receive complaints. You are aware the DPP, under the Constitution, is mandated to direct the Inspector General or any other investigative agency to conduct investigations. So when we receive a complaint, we will be able to determine which is the relevant agency. And the compendium spells out all those agencies and what their respective mandates are. IPOA, holds the police to account. If it is any offense related to corruption, we can refer the case to and all those other agencies. So that command center, which will be, as we near the elections, will be a 24-hour call center, will be manned by prosecutors throughout the day, and will also be receiving reports from the counties and the regions on what is going on. So that generally provides the oversight mechanism that the DPP is going to have whenever an offense is committed.
There are cases where the DCI has actually felt as if the DPP is a stumbling block towards justice, in that DPP has spent sleepless nights investigating a particular case. DCIS rather, brings the file to the DPP, and then the DPP says, Rabat, threshold, not enough, I'm not going to court.
I would tell you that when I started prosecution more than 25 years ago, we never had any guidelines. So that if I made a decision, you would not know what I considered in arriving at that decision. Under the current dispensation, we have policies and guidelines, and we have sensitized all our key stakeholders, including the National Police, EACC, IPOA, all the investigative agencies, including Wanjiku herself or himself, on those policies. And today, Eric, if I were to make a decision, you can actually, based on those guidelines, be able to determine how a decision was arrived at. And that is all I can say about that. So, if at all,
so what do you think needs to happen? Is it more sensitization of the DCI for them to understand the DPP?
Perhaps that is one of the things, but remember, whenever a decision is made on a file, it is returned with reasons. If it is insufficient evidence, the DPP could be telling you, cover this aspect of this case and resubmit the file, or clarify this and resubmit the file. A prosecutor is the person who knows, because a prosecutor is supposed to anticipate even what the defense could come up with during the trial. And so we work ahead to see if we can plug some of those gaps. And if that is what the DPP is doing, he's only doing it in the interest of justice, to strengthen the case so that when it goes to court, and there are so many cases that have gone to court and succeeded. We have seen EACC, they submit their files. All these other agencies, they submit their files, including the police, Mr. Latiff. So I think maybe those are just isolated cases.
In very many cases, though, do you actually consider the capacity of the investigative agency and the officers in the various stations? So, for instance, you may need a lot more, but you very well know that this particular station and the officers here do not have the capacity to give me what I need.
So there are instances where, because when a file is submitted, you can obviously see the rank of an investigation officer. There are instances throughout my career that I've seen a file and said, no, they didn't give it their best shot. Perhaps because of their level of experience, they were not able to cover. And I've recommended, could this be given to a more senior officer to see if they can do a more professional work. But you see, that is something that you could have noticed, because reading a file, you can tell that they didn't apply their expertise in unraveling the truth about that case. But overall, I would say that is a matter that we best leave to the National Police Service. They receive the complaints, they look at the complexity of the case, and then they are able to determine who they are able to allocate that case so that it is competently investigated.
Okay. Yeah. We want to thank you very much, Alois, for coming to join us today. Alois Kemo is the man in charge of criminal prosecutions in Rift Valley, all the way from Lodwar, like you said, bordering Ethiopia and South Sudan, bordering Uganda, coming all the way bordering Tanzania, down mpaka hapa Nakuru, hapa Naivasha, hapa Mai Mahiu, all the way.
Bado ni Kenya.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having
all
me.
the best as you and your colleagues work on dealing with cases of election malpractice, election violence, and all.
Help us sensitize the public also.
Yes.
And it's really my pleasure having met both of you. Say hi to Muga. I don't know where he went today.
He's on leave. Man is enjoying his time.
Oh, you also go on leave.
Yes.
Imagine.
He goes on leave. Counties of Kisumu, Siaya, Kakamega, Migori, Kwale, Kitui, and Homa Bay have some 90 water wells that have been sunk with the aid of Colgate and Well Boring, a UK NGO.
Giving water to much needed communities, and you can also be a part of this. With every Colgate toothpaste that you buy, some of it will be donated to making sure that some 30 more water wells can be sunk and providing this much needed resource to communities around the country.
Yes, buy Colgate, help sink more wells. Asante sana for joining us in the Kenya's biggest conversation today. All eyes on Parliament this afternoon as Ukur Yatani presents the budget, and he tells us where he's going to take another pound of flesh from us. Amekula kila kitu, anataka mpaka macho. We will be discussing that tomorrow morning as well. Keep it here for more entertainment throughout the day. Now is music, and then Yolanda and DJ Absolute will be coming at 11. Have a lovely day. It's 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.